Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash, the Paldea champion, won the hearts of Penny, Nemona, and the Elite Four. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Crown and the Challenger. The weight of the crown was not metal, but paper. Stacks of it. Digital slates chimed with incessant, polite requests for approvals, authorizations, and budget reallocations. For the past 3 weeks, Ash Ketchum, the newly minted top champion of the Paldea region, had fought more battles against labyrinthine supply chain logistics and interdepartmental squabbling than he had in the entire Victory Road Challenge. His office, a spacious, sunlit room atop the Naranja Academy spire that served as the league's headquarters, offered a panoramic view of Mesogos's vibrant, winding streets. It was a view he had barely registered. His gaze was fixed on a holographic map of Area 3, where a dispute over the certification process for aspiring trainers was causing a month-long backlog. Beside him, Larry, the Medali gym leader and member of the Elite Four, sighed, the sound a perfect symphony of resignation and mild despair. "As you can see, champion," Larry said, his tone as flat as the plains of West Province, Department of Trainer Affairs insists on the 17-point preliminary assessment. Department of Pokemon Welfare counters that points 6, 9, and 14 are redundant and cause undue stress to the trainer's first partner Pokemon. They have been exchanging memos on the subject since your predecessor's tenure. Ash leaned forward, elbows on the polished mahogany desk, his chin resting in his hand. Pikachu, perched on the corner of the desk, mimicked the pose, a tiny, thoughtful frown on his face. Ash wasn't looking at the memos. He was looking at the map, at the flow of trainers, the locations of the Pokemon centers, the natural choke points in the terrain. "The problem isn't the test, Larry. It's the location," Ash said, his voice quiet but clear. He tapped the map. "They're funneling everyone through this one ranger station here, at the pass. It's inefficient. The station is understaffed, and the terrain is too rugged for rookies. They spend half a day just getting there, their Pokemon are tired before the test even starts, and then they fail." Larry blinked. He adjusted his glasses, a flicker of something other than exhaustion in his eyes. "The station has been the designated checkpoint for a decade. And it's a bad one," Ash countered, straightening up. His decisiveness was a physical force in the room. "Here's what we're going to do. Authorize 3 temporary certification points. One here," he tapped a spot near a Pokemon Center on the outskirts of Zapopico, "one here, by the river south of the Area 3 watchtower, and a mobile unit we can dispatch from Medali. Spread the load." He looked at Larry directly. "As for the test, make it 12 points. Cut the redundancies Pokemon Welfare flagged. Send a memo. One memo, stating that this is the new procedure, effective immediately, under the top champion's authority. Any further disputes can be scheduled for a formal review in 6 months, after we have data on how this works." Larry was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting from Ash to the map and back again. The simplicity of it, the sheer, unadulterated common sense, was almost breathtaking. Geeta would have formed a committee. She would have commissioned a study. The memos would have continued for another year. Ash had solved a 2-month bureaucratic war in less than 2 minutes. "I see," Larry said, the words carrying a novel weight. He offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I will draft the directive, champion." "Thanks, Larry. And call me Ash, of course, Champion Ash." As Larry gathered his datapad, the heavy oak doors to the office flew open with a bang that made both men and one Pikachu jump. Standing framed in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright hallway light, was a figure crackling with an energy so potent it felt like static electricity. Her long, dark hair was a chaotic masterpiece, her eyes burned with a familiar, feverish intensity, and a wide, predatory grin stretched across her face. "Ash." Nemona's voice echoed in the cavernous office. "I've been looking all over for you. They said you were buried in paperwork. I'm here to dig you out." She strode into the room, her school uniform somehow looking more like a battle tunic. Her Pomot trotted faithfully at her side, its cheeks sparking with mirrored excitement. Larry looked from Nemona's explosive entrance to Ash's calm, amused expression and seemed to make a calculated decision that his presence was no longer required. "I will see to that directive," he said, already moving toward the door with the practiced efficiency of a man escaping a natural disaster. "Good day, champion. Miss Nemona." Nemona gave him a distracted wave, her attention locked entirely on Ash. "Hey, Larry, don't work too hard." She turned back to Ash, her grin widening. "So? Are you ready?" Ash leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his own face. The suffocating weight of the paper crown lifted instantly. This was familiar territory. This was home. "Ready for what, Nemona?" "I was just about to authorize the quarterly budget for Pokeball polish." Her laughter was loud and genuine. "Very funny. You know what I'm here for. It's been 3 weeks. 3. That's 21 days without a proper, all-out, no-holds-barred battle. I'm starting to get rusty. My Pokemon are getting bored. Pawmot tried to start a fight with a lawnmower yesterday." "Pawmo." The Pokemon chirped defensively, puffing out its chest. "Pika Pie." Pikachu laughed, hopping from the desk onto Ash's shoulder. Ash stood up, the movement fluid and ready. He felt the familiar thrum of anticipation, the pull of the fight that was as essential to him as breathing. "All right, you've convinced me. The polish can wait. Where are we doing this?" "I already booked the grand training field," she said, practically bouncing on the balls of her feet. "The big one. No ceiling. Full terrain simulation. It's all set up. Let's go, let's go, let's go." She was already turning, halfway out the door before he'd even taken a step. He shook his head, a fond warmth spreading through his chest. Some things, thankfully, never changed. He looked back at the desk, at the stacks of data pads and the blinking map. The job was important. Leading Paldea, protecting it, that was his duty now. But this was his soul. "Come on, Pikachu," he said, scratching his partner under the chin. "Let's go remind our rival what a champion-level battle feels like." Pikachu. His partner cheered, cheeks sparking with golden light. The crown was heavy, but right now, all Ash could feel was the familiar, comfortable weight of his oldest friend on his shoulder as he walked toward the sound of a promised battle. The walk to the grand training field was a blur of Nemona's rapid-fire chatter. She talked about the new training regimen she'd designed, a minor celebrity trainer she'd crushed in a battle the other day, a rumor about a new move being taught at the academy, all while her eyes kept darting to him, gleaming with impatience. Ash listened, offering quiet comments, his own excitement building in a steady, controlled burn. This was their ritual, a dance as intricate as any battle. Her fire needed his calm to focus, and his calm was ignited by her fire. The grand training field was an impressive sight. It was a massive, open-air arena carved into the academy grounds, its floor composed of interlocking plates that could simulate any environment, from rocky mountains to a churning sea. Today, it was set to a standard grassy plain, dotted with large boulders for cover. The sky above was a brilliant, cloudless blue. They took their places on opposite ends of the field, the 100-yard distance between them humming with unspoken energy. There were no referees, no cheering crowds. There was no need. This wasn't for a title or for glory. It was a conversation, spoken in the only language they both truly understood. "Full battle. 6 on 6, Nemona yelled, her voice ringing with joy. "Same rules as the finals?" "You know it," Ash shouted back, grabbing a Pokeball from his belt. The worn, smooth sphere felt perfect in his hand. "Let's have a battle, Nemona." Her answering grin was dazzling. "That's what I've been waiting to hear. Lycanroc, let's go." She threw her Pokeball, and with a flash of red light, her midday form Lycanroc appeared, sleek and sharp, letting out a defiant howl. Its orange fur seemed to burn in the afternoon sun. Ash matched her move. "Arcanine, I choose you." His own Pokemon materialized in a burst of energy, the massive, striped canine shaking its cream-colored mane and letting out a ground-shaking roar that was pure, untamed power. The air temperature around it seemed to rise several degrees. "A fire type against my rock type. Bold, Ash. But you're not the only one who knows about coverage moves. Lycanroc, Accelerock." The wolf Pokemon shot forward, a blur of orange and white, moving with incredible speed. It was a priority move, designed to strike first and strike hard. Ash was unfazed. Arcanine, extreme speed, meet it head-on. Arcanine became a streak of orange flame, a living comet that rocketed across the field. The two blurs of motion collided in the center of the arena with a thunderous crack that echoed off the academy walls. Rock met fire in a shower of sparks and a cloud of dust. For a moment, they were locked in a stalemate, a brutal contest of raw power. "Don't let up, use Stone Edge," Nemona commanded. From the dust cloud, jagged pillars of glowing blue rock erupted from the ground, aimed straight at Arcanine. "Dodge and use Flare Blitz," Ash countered instantly. Arcanine was already moving. It twisted its body in midair, the stone pillars scraping its flank but failing to land a solid hit. It enveloped itself in a raging inferno and slammed back into Lycanroc before it could react. The rock type yelped, thrown backward and scorched by the intense flames. "Now, close quarters. Wild charge." "No you don't, Drill Run," Nemona yelled, her eyes narrowed in concentration. Arcanine's body crackled with untamed electricity as it lunged, but Lycanroc was already spinning, its body becoming a living drill bit aimed at the ground. It dove underground an instant before Arcanine's attack could connect. Ash's eyes scanned the field. He's going to come up from below. "Arcanine, jump and use Flamethrower on the ground." Arcanine leapt high into the air. As it did, the ground beneath its former position erupted, Lycanroc bursting out with claws extended. But its target was gone. Arcanine, suspended at the peak of its jump, unleashed a torrent of white-hot fire directly downward. The blast engulfed the emerging Lycanroc, which howled in pain. Finish it with one more extreme speed. Before Lycanroc could even recover, Arcanine landed and shot forward again, crashing into its opponent with the force of a freight train. This time, Lycanroc didn't get up. It lay on the scorched grass, swirls in its eyes. Nemona recalled her Pokémon without a word, her expression unreadable. For a moment, she just stared at Ash, a flicker of something new in her eyes. Not frustration, but a deep, burning curiosity. She wasn't just fighting Ash the rival anymore. She was fighting Ash the champion, and she was beginning to see the difference. The speed of his commands, the flawless synergy with his Pokémon, it was a whole other level. Her grin returned, sharper than before. Okay, warming up is over, Goodra, let's get serious." Out came her hulking, pseudo-legendary dragon type, its slimy body glistening. It let out a low, rumbling cry, looking surprisingly formidable. Ash recalled Arcanine, giving the ball a grateful pat. "You were amazing. Get a good rest." He looked across the field at Goodra, a thoughtful expression on his face. He needed something that could handle its incredible special defense and hit back hard. "Sceptile, I choose you." The forest Pokémon appeared, lean and green, a twig held casually in its mouth. It adjusted the twig with a flick of its tongue, its yellow eyes locked on the massive dragon across the field. The size difference was comical. Nemona seized the advantage. "Goodra, use Sludge Bomb." Goodra opened its mouth and launched a volley of toxic purple spheres. "Leaf Storm, let's go," Ash commanded. Sceptile didn't move from its spot. It took a deep breath, and a swirling vortex of razor-sharp leaves erupted around it, forming a defensive cyclone. The sludge bombs splattered against the green barrier, dissolving harmlessly. The vortex then shot forward, a furious green blizzard that slammed into Goodra. The dragon Pokémon grunted, taking the super effective hit, but it stood its ground, its natural bulk absorbing much of the damage. "It's tough," Ash murmured. "Just what I'd expect from you, Nemona." "We're just getting started, Goodra, Dragon Pulse." A shimmering, draconic beam of energy shot from Goodra's mouth. "Dodge it, Sceptile." "Use Dual Chop." Sceptile moved with blinding speed, a green blur that evaded the beam with inches to spare. It leapt onto one of the large boulders, its arm blades glowing with a faint white light, and then launched itself at Goodra. It struck twice, a rapid-fire slash against the dragon's gooey hide. The attack did damage, but Goodra barely flinched. "Too weak. Grab it, Goodra," Nemona yelled. Goodra's long, flexible horns shot out, wrapping around Sceptile's torso and trapping it. It lifted the smaller Pokémon into the air, squeezing tightly. "Now, Ice Beam, point blank." Ash's eyes widened. A direct hit would be devastating. Sceptile, break free with Leaf Blade on its horns. Sceptile's blades glowed a vibrant green. It twisted its body, slashing downwards at the horns that held it captive. Goodra roared in pain and surprise, its grip loosening for just a fraction of a second. It was all Sceptile needed. It kicked off of Gudra's chest, flipping backward through the air and landing gracefully on the grass. What a counter! Nemona breathed, her eyes sparkling. But you're still in range. Use Ice Beam again. Not this time, Sceptile. Use Solar Beam. Sceptile stood tall, raising its head to the sky. The bulb-like seeds on its back began to glow, absorbing the bright Paldean sunlight at an astonishing rate. It was a risky move, leaving him wide open. Nemona's eyes lit up. He's charging, Gudra, don't let him. Full power Ice Beam, now. The icy blast shot across the field, a beam of pure frosty energy. It was faster than the solar beam could charge. But Ash wasn't panicking. A calm, confident smile touched his lips.
Now, Sceptile. Just as the ice beam was about to hit, Sceptile's movements became a blur. It used Detect. A faint green barrier shimmered into existence around it for a split second, the ice beam crashing against it and dissipating into a harmless cloud of mist. The attack had been a feint, a bait to draw out Nemona's strongest move.
Nemona's jaw dropped. He baited me, Solar Beam, fire. The light that had been gathering on Sceptile's back coalesced into a blindingly bright sphere and then erupted forward in a massive, searing beam of solar energy. It crossed the field in an instant and struck the stunned Gudra dead on. The explosion was immense, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and steam. When it cleared, Gudra was down.
2-0. The field was silent for a moment, the only sound the rustling of the wind. Nemona recalled Gudra, her knuckles white where she gripped the pokey ball. Her breathing was a little faster now, her grin completely gone, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated focus. This was what she lived for. A challenge that pushed her to her absolute limit.
You're really not holding back, are you, champion? She said, her voice low and thrilling. Would you want me to? Ash replied, his own heart pounding with a familiar joy. Never, she whispered. Dudenspars, let's show him our speed. Her third Pokemon appeared, the long, segmented creature looking surprisingly intimidating as it coiled and hissed. An interesting choice, Ash noted, recalling Sceptile with a word of praise. Okay, Donphan, you're up. The armor Pokemon rolled onto the field, a living tire of thick, gray hide. The matchup was set. A fast, serpentine normal type against a heavy, rolling ground type. Dudenspars, use Boomburst. Nemona commanded. The Pokemon unleashed a deafening wave of sound, a visible distortion in the air that rushed at Donphan. Roll out. Go. Donphan curled into a tight ball and began to spin, its hard hide deflecting the worst of the sonic attack as it picked up speed, rumbling across the field like a boulder in an avalanche. Dodge and use Hyperdrill. Dudenspars slithered to the side with surprising agility, avoiding the charging Donphan. Its tail began to spin, glowing with a sharp, piercing energy, and it shot forward. Iron Defense. Ash called out. Donphan uncurled just in time, its body flashing with a metallic sheen. Dudenspars's Hyperdrill slammed into its side, but the boosted defense held. Donphan grunted from the impact but didn't fall. Now, grab it. Use your trunk. Before Dudenspars could pull back, Donphan's trunk whipped out, wrapping around the long Pokemon's body. Earthquake. Donphan lifted Dudenspars and slammed it into the ground with incredible force. At the same time, it stomped its foot, and the entire field shook violently. The ground-type attack, at point-blank range, was too much. Dudenspars fainted. 3-0. Nemona was breathing hard now, a sheen of sweat on her brow, but her eyes were brighter than ever. She was losing, badly, but she was loving every second of it. This was the pressure she craved, the wall she wanted to smash through. You're just too good, Ash, she said, her voice a mix of frustration and pure admiration. Earthworm, it's your turn. Let's turn this around. The giant, metallic earthworm Pokemon burst from its ball, its strange, arm-like appendages waving. Its ability, Earth Eater, would render Donphan's ground-type moves useless. A perfect strategic counter. So you noticed Donphan's reliance on Earthquake, Ash said with an approving nod. Smart, Nemona. I've studied all your battles. Earthworm, use Iron Head. The massive steel type charged, its head glowing like polished silver. Meet it with Rollout, Ash commanded. The two heavyweights collided in the middle of the field with a deafening clang of metal on hide. They were locked in a shoving match, a pure contest of strength. Shedtail, now, Nemona yelled, a cunning glint in her eyes.
Orthworm suddenly left a glowing green substitute of itself in front of Donphan and zipped back to Nemona's side of the field. In its place, she sent out her fifth Pokémon, the vibrantly colored Meowscarada. The magician Pokémon landed lightly on its feet, taking Orthworm's place in the battle with half of its health already gone, but with a substitute to protect it. It was a brilliant, momentum-stealing play.
A free switch in behind a sub, clever, Ash admitted. Donphan was now facing a grass type, a terrible matchup. Donphan, come back. Don't let him, Meowscarada, flower trick. Meowscarada was already moving. It threw a flower bomb that homed in on Donphan, striking it just as the red light of the recall beam hit. The super effective attack still landed, dealing significant damage. Ash felt the jolt through the Pokeball. Kilowattrel, let's go. Ash sent out his electric, flying type, its sleek black and yellow form cutting through the air. An electric type against a grass type, smart. Nemona echoed his earlier words with a fierce grin. But I'm ready. Meowscarada, use knock off. The magician cat disappeared in a puff of smoke, its dark type move making it a blur of motion as it rushed Kilowattrel. Take to the air. Hurricane. Kilowattrel soared upwards, flapping its wings to generate a ferocious cyclone that tore across the field. Meowscarada was caught in the gale, its substitute instantly shattering. It was tossed about by the winds, unable to gain its footing.
Now, Electro Ball. While Meowscarada was trapped in the hurricane, Kilowattrel gathered a sphere of crackling electricity and fired it down. The sphere's power was based on the speed difference between the users. With Meowscarada immobilized and Kilowattrel soaring, the effect was devastating. The ball of lightning struck the grass type, and it fell to the ground, defeated.
4-1. Nemona recalled Meowscarada, her shoulders slumping just a little. She only had 2 Pokémon left. She looked at her last 2 Pokéballs, then back at Ash, who stood calm and ready, his Kilowattrel circling overhead. You're anticipating everything I do, she said, her voice quiet. It's like you're 3 steps ahead. We've battled enough times, Ash said gently. I know how you think. You're all about relentless offense, always pushing forward. So I planned for it. Her head snapped up, a fire rekindling in her eyes. So you're saying I'm predictable? I'm saying you're powerful, he corrected, and I respect that power enough to prepare for it. His words seemed to land differently than she expected. He wasn't mocking her. He was honoring her strength. A faint blush touched her cheeks, but she shook it off, her competitive spirit surging back. All right, champion. No more holding back. Let's go, Kilowattrel. She sent out her own Kilowattrel, a mirror match in the sky. And my last one, Pawmot, let's do this together. Her ace, her partner, appeared on the field beside her Kilowattrel, its fur bristling with power. A 2-on-1 advantage. Ash recalled his own exhausted Kilowattrel. You were incredible. Thank you. He looked at his last 2 Pokémon. He had Donphan, who was injured, and his partner. He knew what he had to do. Donphan, let's give it all we've got. The injured Donphan returned to the field, looking weary but determined. A 2v1, and your Donphan is already hurt. Bold move, Ash, Nemona called out, though there was a note of caution in her voice. She knew better than to underestimate him. Kilowattrel, use Thunderbolt on Donphan. Pawmot, you use Double Shock on the ground to block its movement. Her Kilowattrel unleashed a massive bolt of lightning from the sky. At the same time, Pawmot slammed its paws together, sending a web of electricity across the entire field. Donphan, use Earthquake, Ash commanded, his voice ringing with urgency. Donphan stomped the ground one last time. The field buckled. The earthquake wasn't aimed at Nemona's Pokémon. It was aimed at the field itself. The ground cracked and shattered, sending up a massive cloud of dust and debris, obscuring everyone's vision. The thunderbolt struck the dust cloud, but its target was gone. Pawmot's Double Shock was grounded by the churning earth. Now, roll out. Aim for Kilowattrel. From the dust cloud, Donphan shot out, not along the ground, but through the air. The force of its own earthquake had launched it like a cannonball. It soared through the dust, a spinning gray missile, and slammed directly into Nemona's unsuspecting Kilowattrel. The flying type squawked in shock and pain, sent tumbling from the sky, knocked out cold. In a single, brilliant move, Ash had used his Pokemon's injury, the terrain, and his opponent's strategy against them to even the odds. It was now one-on-one. His battered Donphan against her fresh Pawmot. But the effort had taken its toll. Donphan landed hard, unable to get up. It had fainted from the sheer exertion. Double knockout, Ash breathed, recalling his brave Pokemon. Nemona did the same for her Kilowattrel, her expression one of utter awe. That was incredible, Ash. I never would have thought of that. Now, it all came down to this. The final matchup. The one everyone knew was coming from the moment the challenge was issued. Ash looked at his shoulder. You ready, buddy? Pikachu. Pikachu leapt from his shoulder, landing on the field with a shower of sparks, his red cheeks blazing. Let's do this, Pawmot, Nemona yelled, her voice filled with a desperate, hopeful energy. The two electric rodents faced each other across the ruined battlefield. The air itself seemed to crackle. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then, both trainers gave the same command. Quick attack. They were two streaks of yellow lightning, meeting in the center with a sharp crack. They disengaged, circling each other, testing, waiting for an opening. Pawmot, use close combat. Pikachu, use Iron Tail to block. Pawmot rushed in, its paws a blur of motion as it unleashed a flurry of powerful blows. Pikachu spun, its tail glowing like steel, parrying each strike with a shower of sparks. It was a dazzling display of speed and skill. Break off and use Thunderbolt, Ash commanded. Pikachu kicked away from Pawmot and leapt back, unleashing a colossal bolt of lightning. You too, Pawmot, use Double Shock. Pawmot met the Thunderbolt with its own, even more powerful attack. The two golden beams of pure electricity collided, erupting in a blinding flash of light and a deafening boom that shook the very foundations of the arena. The explosion kicked up another massive cloud of smoke. This was it. The climax. Ash raised his arm, his Terra Orb glowing with a rainbow light. Let's show them our full power. Pikachu, Terrastallize. A beam of energy shot from his orb, striking Pikachu. Its body began to shine, crystallizing into a new, radiant form. A moment later, a massive, ornate chandelier of pure electric energy formed above its head. Pikachu had become a Terra Electric type. Its power skyrocketed. From across the field, Nemona did the same. Our turn, Pawmot, go all out, Terrastallize. Her Pawmot was also enveloped in the Terrastall phenomenon, a crown of crystallized fighting energy appearing above its head as it became a pure fighting type. Terra Blast. Ash roared. Close combat. Nemona screamed, pouring all her passion into the command. Pikachu gathered all of its newfound power, the chandelier above it glowing like a miniature sun. It unleashed a beam of Terra energy so immense, so powerful, it turned the entire sky gold. At the same moment, Nemona's Terra-fighting Pawmot shot forward, its body glowing with an incredible aura, ready to meet the blast head-on with its ultimate physical attack. The two attacks were about to collide in what would be a world-shaking explosion. Miles away, in a darkened, climate-controlled server room deep beneath the League headquarters, Penny sat bathed in the glow of a dozen monitors. She wasn't a part of the Elite Four, not officially. Her title was Head of Special Projects and Cybersecurity, a position Ash had created for her. It was a quiet job, just the way she liked it. She tracked regional energy outputs, monitored network traffic, and kept the League's data secure from the kinds of people she used to be. An alarm, soft and subtle, chimed on her main console. It wasn't a security breach. It was an energy alert. A massive, unprecedented power spike was emanating from the Academy's grand training field. She zoomed in on the data stream, her fingers flying across the keyboard. 1.21 gigawatts, that's impossible for a training match, she mumbled, pushing her glasses up her nose. She cross-referenced the energy signature. It was raw Terrastall energy, but the concentration was off the charts. It was Ash and Nemona. Of course it was. She was about to dismiss it as a sensor malfunction when a secondary alarm blared, this one far more urgent. It was a deep-level alert from a sensor network she had secretly piggybacked onto, the one monitoring the great crater of Paldea, Area 0. A corresponding energy spike had just occurred at the crater's lowest point. It wasn't an echo. It was a response. A colossal wave of dormant energy deep within the Earth had surged, mirroring the spike at the Academy perfectly, like a sleeping giant stirring at a distant shout. Penny's blood ran cold. She pulled up geological resonance charts, energy decay patterns, anything that could explain it. It made no sense. The energy from Ash's battle couldn't have traveled that far, let alone penetrated miles of rock to the 0 point. This was something else. Something was listening. She quickly patched a call through to the only person with a higher security clearance. Top champion Gita's face appeared on her screen, looking as composed and severe as ever. Miss Penny. This is unscheduled. Report, Gita said, her voice clipped and devoid of warmth. Ma'am, I'm detecting a highly anomalous energy event in Area 0, Penny said, trying to keep her voice steady. A dormant energy source just spiked, its signature perfectly matching the energy output of Champion Ash's battle with Champion Nemona. Gita's expression didn't change. She processed the information for a moment. A sensor echo. The concentration of terrestrial energy from the champion's battle must be interfering with the deep-level monitors. Calibrate them and file a report. With all due respect, ma'am, I don't think it's an echo, Penny insisted, her voice gaining a bit of its old Team Star fire. The resonance frequency is wrong. It felt organic. Like a reaction. Something down there woke up for a second. Gita's stare was icy. Are you suggesting the very ground of Paldea is reacting to a Pokemon battle? That is illogical. Your job is to deal with data, Miss Penny, not fantasy. Calibrate the sensors. Gita out. The screen went blank. Penny was left alone in the silent, humming server room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Gita had dismissed it, but Penny trusted her data more than anyone's logic. She had felt it, a flicker in the endless stream of code and numbers. A ghost in the machine. A single, terrifying pulse from the heart of the world. And it had been looking directly at Ash. The explosion was blinding. A sphere of golden light and raw power erupted on the field, forcing both Ash and Nemona to shield their eyes. The shockwave ripped across the arena, a physical blow that sent dust and pebbles flying. For a long moment, the world was nothing but white light and roaring sound. When vision returned, the field was a cratered, smoking ruin. In the center of the largest crater, both Pokemon lay, their terrestrial forms gone. Both were unable to battle. A draw. The silence that followed was profound. Nemona stared, her chest heaving, her eyes wide and unfocused. Ash stood just as still, his breath catching in his throat. They had pushed each other to the absolute edge and beyond. Slowly, a grin spread across Nemona's face. It was not her usual predatory smile. It was wide, bright, and filled with a kind of delirious, pure joy. It was the look of someone who had just climbed a mountain and found not a summit, but an entire new sky. She burst out laughing, a full-throated, happy sound that echoed across the empty stadium. A draw. A draw. Can you believe it? She recalled Palmont, her movements shaky with adrenaline. Ash did the same for Pikachu, who was already stirring. He scooped his partner into his arms, holding him close. You were incredible, buddy. Absolutely incredible. Pikachu mumbled, nuzzling into his chest. Nemona ran across the ruined field, her steps unsteady but eager. She didn't stop until she was right in front of him, her eyes shining with an intensity that had nothing to do with battle. That, she panted, trying to catch her breath. That was the greatest battle of my entire life, Ash. Mine too, he admitted, his own heart still hammering. I've never been pushed that hard. I've never had to think that fast. When you used Earthquake to launch Donphan, my heart just stopped, she said, her hands clenching and unclenching at her sides. I finally understand. Understand what? He asked, his voice soft. She looked up at him, and the fierce fire in her eyes had softened into a warm, glowing ember. The adrenaline of the fight was fading, leaving behind something else, something raw and vulnerable and overwhelmingly powerful. Why winning against anyone else feels so empty, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's not just about getting stronger. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be stronger. Someone who sees the fire in you and instead of being afraid of it, they build a bigger one right next to you. She took a small, hesitant step closer. The space between them was charged with a different kind of energy now, quieter but no less potent. He could see the exhaustion in her face, the smudges of dirt on her cheek, the way her hair was a complete mess. He'd never seen her look more beautiful. Ash, she began, her voice trembling slightly, when I fight you, it's the only time I feel completely whole, completely me. He didn't know what to say. He just watched her, his own emotions a tangled, confusing storm. He felt the deep bond of their rivalry, the profound respect of one warrior for another, but underneath it, just like in her eyes, something new was blooming. She reached out, her fingers gently brushing against his arm. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through him that had nothing to do with Pikachu. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For that battle, for everything." She held his gaze for a second longer, a world of unspoken feelings passing between them, before she finally pulled back, a shy, un-Nemona-like smile on her face. We should probably get our Pokémon to the center." "Yeah," Ash agreed, his voice a little hoarse. "Yeah, we should." As they walked side by side toward the academy, the setting sun casting long shadows across the field, the silence between them was no longer just the comfortable quiet of rivals. It was deeper, more complex. The battle had changed something. It had forged their bond into something new, something stronger and brighter than either of them yet understood. And high above them, in the darkening sky, the first stars of evening began to appear, oblivious to the sleeping giant that had, for a brief, terrifying moment, opened its eye. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2, The First Test of Command. The infirmary lights of the Pokémon Center hummed with a sterile, comforting monotony. Ash sat on a bench in the pristine white hallway, Pikachu curled up and fast asleep in his lap, a tiny bandage plastered over a scratch on his ear. His other Pokémon were resting comfortably inside, their energy spent but their spirits high. He could feel the familiar, pleasant ache in his own muscles, the mental exhaustion that came after a battle of that magnitude. It was a good feeling. It felt like progress.
He was replaying the final, explosive moments of the match in his mind when the sound of approaching footsteps broke his concentration. Nemona emerged from the recovery wing, her own team now safely cared for. She had a small smudge of dust on her cheek she'd missed, and her hair was still a magnificent tangle, but the wild, adrenaline-fueled energy was gone. In its place was a quiet, contemplative calm that was almost more arresting. "They're all going to be fine," she said, her voice soft. She sat down next to him on the bench, leaving a respectable but charged space between them. Nurse Joy said she's never seen Pokémon so perfectly in sync while pushing their limits so hard. She called it battle harmony.
"Sounds about right," Ash said, gently stroking Pikachu's back. "That's what it felt like." They sat in silence for a moment, the unspoken emotions from the battlefield still hanging in the air between them. The confession, the raw vulnerability. It was new territory for their relationship, a map they would have to draw together. "You know," Nemona began, her gaze fixed on the polished linoleum floor, "for as long as I can remember, becoming a champion was all I cared about. It was the goal. The finish line. And when I did it, when I earned the rank, it was great. For a day. Then it just felt quiet. The challenges stopped. The fire started to go out." She turned to look at him, her dark eyes searching his. "But watching you, not just today, but ever since you came to Paldea, you're different. You're a champion, but you're still climbing. It's like the title wasn't your finish line. It was just the start of a whole new mountain."
He considered her words. She was right. For him, the title wasn't the end goal. It was a tool. It was a promise. A promise to the people and Pokémon of the region to protect them, to help them grow stronger, to be the shield they needed. "Maybe the goal isn't to reach the top," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's just to keep climbing, no matter where you are."
A slow smile spread across her face. "Yeah. I think I get that now." She nudged his shoulder playfully with her own. "Just don't think this means I'm going to stop trying to knock you off your peak, champion." "I wouldn't have it any other way, rival," he shot back, the familiar banter a comfortable blanket settling over the new, fragile emotions. His Pokénav, resting on the bench beside him, suddenly buzzed to life, its screen flashing with an urgent, high-priority summons. It was stamped with the official seal of the Paldea Pokémon League, and the sender was listed as top champion Gita. The message was brief and direct. "Emergency meeting. Elite Four and Champion Ash. Conference Room Alpha. Immediately." Nemona glanced at the screen, her brow furrowing. "An emergency meeting? Now? What's going on?" Ash's brief moment of peace vanished, replaced by the weight of his new reality. The paper crown was settling back onto his head. "I don't know," he said, carefully scooping up the sleeping Pikachu into his arms. but it sounds serious. He stood up, his body protesting the sudden movement. I have to go. Will you be okay? Of course, she said, standing with him. There was a flicker of disappointment in her eyes, a desire for their moment to last longer, but it was overshadowed by a fierce loyalty. Go. Do your champion thing. I'll make sure your team gets a 5-star meal when they're discharged. He gave her a grateful smile. Thanks, Nemona. Anytime, Ash. As he walked down the hallway, he could feel her eyes on him. He was no longer just her rival, the wandering trainer who had given her the fight of her life. He was Champion Ash, a leader with duties that superseded their personal world. The battle was over. The first test of his reign was about to begin. Conference Room Alpha was a stark, intimidating space. The walls were dark, polished stone, the ceiling was high, and the air was chilled to a precise temperature that discouraged casual conversation. In the center of the room was a massive, circular table made of black marble, its surface reflecting the cold, recessed lighting above. The Elite Four were already assembled, each occupying a chair that seemed to reflect their personality. Hassel, the art teacher and dragon-type master, sat with a pained, empathetic expression, his hands steepled in front of him as if in prayer for whatever soul had caused this emergency. Poppy, the tiny steel-type prodigy, was swinging her legs from her oversized chair, looking more bored than concerned. Larry, predictably, looked like he was mentally calculating how much this meeting was cutting into his evening commute. And then there was Rika. The ground-type user and the league's most effusive personality was leaning back in her chair with a deceptively relaxed posture, one leg crossed over the other, her signature green-streaked hair catching the light. She was tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the marble tabletop, but her sharp, intelligent eyes missed nothing. They followed Ash from the moment he entered, a playful, assessing glint within them. At the head of the table, in the only chair that looked remotely like a throne, sat La Primera herself, top champion Gita. Her posture was ramrod straight, her expression an unreadable mask of glacial composure. Her glimmer floated silently behind her chair, its crystalline petals shedding a faint, eerie light. Champion Ash, Gita said, her voice echoing slightly in the silent room. There was no warmth in the greeting. Thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat.
Ash moved to the empty chair between Rika and Hassel. It felt like stepping into a den of Lycanroc, each one sizing him up for a different reason. He gently placed the still sleeping Pikachu on the table in front of him, where his partner let out a tiny, contented sigh and curled up into a tighter ball. The simple, innocent act seemed to momentarily break the tension. He saw the corner of Rika's mouth twitch, and Hassel's expression softened into one of genuine affection.
Now that we are all present, Gita began, her gaze sweeping over the assembled group, we have a crisis to address. At 1743 Standard Time, the entire town of Artazan suffered a complete power failure. Larry sighed. An infrastructure issue. Surely that is a matter for the Public Works Department, not the Elite Four. The failure was not infrastructural, Gita countered, her voice dropping a fraction. The power grid did not malfunction. It was drained. As if something instantaneously consumed every last kilowatt of electricity from the city's generators and Terra Orb charging stations. The outage lasted for precisely 3 hours, after which power returned just as suddenly as it had vanished. The public is confused. The press is beginning to ask questions. Gym leader Brassius is, in his own words, artistically distraught. Hassel leaned forward, his brow deeply furrowed. Consumed? By what? A horde of wild electric-type Pokémon? Unlikely, Gita said, shaking her head. There were no sightings of unusual Pokémon activity. No electromagnetic residue consistent with a mass discharge. The energy simply ceased to be. Our technicians are baffled. Ash listened, his mind racing. A sudden, massive energy drain. It sounded eerily familiar. Gita's cold eyes landed on him. It is, however, consistent with an anomalous energy event flagged by our cybersecurity division earlier this afternoon. One that you were personally involved in, Champion Ash. A ripple of interest went through the room. Rika leaned forward, her playful demeanor gone, replaced by sharp curiosity. Oh, do tell, Primera. Our new champions already getting into trouble? According to a report from Miss Penny in cybersecurity, Gita continued, ignoring Rika's interjection, your battle with champion Nemona generated a terrestrial energy spike of unprecedented magnitude. That spike was mirrored, instantaneously, by a secondary event originating from deep within Area Zero. The mention of Area Zero sucked the air out of the room. Even Poppy stopped swinging her legs. The great crater of Paldea was a place of myth and fear, a place the League officially deemed too dangerous for anyone to enter. I dismissed Miss Penny's initial report as a sensor ghost, Gita stated, a rare flicker of something. Annoyance? Uncertainty? In her eyes. An error caused by the intensity of your battle. But the Artisan event occurred less than an hour later. Its energy signature, though far larger in scale, was a perfect match for the ghost from Area Zero. The implication was clear. The ghost wasn't an error, it was real, and it had just flexed its muscle. The room was silent as the Elite Four processed the information. This wasn't a simple power outage. This was something new, something unknown and potentially terrifying. All eyes eventually turned to Ash. He was the common denominator, the catalyst. This was his first trial by fire, and it wasn't in a stadium. It was here, at this table, under the scrutinizing gaze of Paldea's most powerful trainers. This was the moment of truth. He could defer to Gita, the experienced leader. He could stay silent and let the others debate. Or he could take the crown he had won and truly wear it. He met Gita's gaze, his own expression calm and steady. What's the plan? It was a simple question, but it subtly shifted the dynamic of the entire room. He wasn't just a participant in the meeting anymore. He was demanding a course of action. He was leading. Gita's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. She had expected questions, maybe even a defense. She hadn't expected him to immediately take the reins. The plan, she said, her voice regaining its composure, is to contain the situation. We will issue a statement attributing the outage to a solar flare interfering with the power grid. It is a logical and sufficient explanation that will quell public anxiety. Meanwhile, I will dispatch a League technical team to Artisan to conduct a thorough and discreet investigation. Rika scoffed, a small, unimpressed sound. A solar flare? Really, Primera? That's the best you've got? Sounds like sweeping dust under a very expensive rug? It is about maintaining public order, Rika, Hassel interjected, though he didn't sound entirely convinced himself. Panic would be a most unartistic outcome.
A statement isn't a plan, Ash said, his voice cutting through the debate. It wasn't loud, but it commanded attention. It's a stall. This thing, whatever it is, responded to my power. Then it drained a whole town. It's escalating. We can't just sit back and wait to see what it does next.
He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each Elite Four member. We're not politicians. We're trainers. Our job is to face challenges head-on, not issue press releases about them. Rika's lips curved into a slow, appreciative smile. She leaned her chin on her hand, her eyes sparkling with renewed interest as she watched him. He wasn't just a powerful trainer, he had a spine. Gita's expression hardened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 5 degrees. And what would you propose, Champion Ash? That we march into Area Zero, a restricted zone, based on a single, uncorroborated sensor reading and your feeling that the situation is escalating? No, Ash said calmly, refusing to be intimidated. I propose we gather more information. A technical team is a good idea, but it's not enough. They'll look for faulty wiring and blown transformers. They're not equipped to look for a ghost. We need people on the ground who understand Pokemon, who understand energy, who can feel when something is wrong. He paused, letting his words sink in before delivering his conclusion. I'll go to Artisan myself. The statement hung in the air, charged and absolute. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration of intent. Poppy's eyes widened. Larry actually sat up a little straighter in his chair, and Hassel looked at Ash with a newfound respect. Rika let out a low whistle. Well, now, the boy's got claws. Gita's composure finally cracked. A flash of genuine anger, hot and sharp, broke through her icy facade. Absolutely not. Your place is here, at the League, managing the response. Sending the top champion into the field over a minor power outage would create a panic far worse than the event itself. It is an illogical and reckless allocation of our primary asset. My primary asset is Pikachu, Ash countered smoothly, gesturing to the sleeping Pokemon. My title is a responsibility. And right now, my responsibility is to figure out what we're up against before it decides to drain the power from a hospital, or the entire city of Mesagoza. He turned his attention to Rika, a strategic shift that caught Gita off guard. Rika, you grew up in the farmlands of Paldea. You know the land better than anyone. Your Clodsire can sense things in the earth that no machine can. I'll need an Elite Four liaison, someone the public trusts. I'll need you. Rika's smile widened. It was a genuine, dazzling thing. He wasn't just appealing to her expertise. He was challenging her, inviting her on an adventure. He was speaking her language. Now you're talkin' my kinda talk, champion. An investigation with a bit of dirt on our boots? Sign me up. Ash then looked back to Gita, pressing his advantage, and we'll need technical support. The best. The person who caught this thing in the first place, even when her boss told her it was a ghost. We need Miss Penny providing remote analysis from her lab. I want her patched in, with full access to our field comms and a direct line to me, for the entire operation. This was the masterstroke. He had not only laid out a clear, decisive plan of action but had also built his own team, pulling in a respected Elite Four member and validating the very person Gita had dismissed. He had taken control of the room, not through force or volume, but with unshakable logic and charismatic command. Hassel was the first to break. He nodded slowly, a deep admiration in his eyes. The heart of a dragon is not in its fire, but in its will to protect its own. Ash's plan, it has heart. It is a powerful work of art. I support it. Larry let out a long, weary sigh, but for the first time, it didn't sound like despair. It sounded like relief. It is an efficient plan. It is proactive and allocates specialists to their areas of expertise. It is a far more logical course of action than waiting for a second solar flare. He, too, gave a slight nod of assent. Two of the Elite Four had sided with him. Rika was already on board. Poppy, seeing the way the tide had turned, just shrugged and gave a thumbs up. Sounds more fun than paperwork.
Gita was cornered. She looked around the table at her Elite Four, her loyal subordinates, and saw that she had lost them. They weren't looking at her for guidance anymore. They were looking at Ash. He had, in the space of 5 minutes, completely usurped her authority, not by challenging her title, but by simply being a more effective leader.
The look in her eyes was a complex storm of fury, humiliation, and a grudging, infuriating flicker of admiration. He had beaten her. Not in a Pokemon battle, but in a battle of wills, in her own conference room, in front of her own team.
She stood up, her movements stiff. Very well, she said, the words clipped and sharp, like shards of ice. The motion carries. Champion Ash will lead the initial investigation in Artisan. Rika will accompany him. Miss Penny will provide technical support.
She stared directly at Ash, her eyes boring into him. You will report every 2 hours. You will not engage any unknown threat without my express authorization. And you will not, under any circumstances, make this a public spectacle. Is that understood? Perfectly, Ash said, his tone respectful but firm. He stood up as well, carefully lifting Pikachu back into his arms. We'll leave at first light. He gave a nod to the rest of the room. Thank you for your trust. He turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. As the heavy doors closed behind him, Rika leaned back in her chair, a slow, predatory grin spreading across her face. Well, Primera, she drawled, her voice laced with amusement. Looks like the league's got a brand new boss.
Gita didn't answer. She simply stared at the empty chair where Ash had sat, her hands clenched into white-knuckled fists under the table. For the first time in a very long time, La Primera had been challenged. And for the first time in her life, she had lost. The Ice Queen's throne had a definite crack in it, and the warmth that was beginning to melt the ice felt dangerously like respect. Penny nearly dropped her half-eaten bag of sour gummies when the summons came through. It wasn't an email or a memo. It was a direct, top-level priority directive that flashed onto her main screen, overriding all other windows. Assignment. Field Operation. Art as an Anomaly Lead. Champion Ash Ketchum Field Liaison. Elite Four Rika Tech and Intel Support. Head of Special Projects Penny Directive. Provide continuous remote analysis and direct communication support to Field Team. You are granted Level Alpha security clearance for the duration of the operation. Report directly to Champion Ash. Penny stared at the last line, her mind rebooting 3 times in a row. Report directly to Champion Ash. Not to Gita. Not to the League's IT department. To Ash.
The champion had overruled La Primera and specifically requested her. Her, the girl who spent most of her life hiding behind a keyboard, the former, big boss, of a group of school delinquents.
A strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't the anxiety she usually felt when put on the spot. It was validation. He had listened to her. He had believed her when no one else would. And now, he was trusting her with a critical role in the most important investigation in Paldea.
Her fingers, usually reserved for navigating complex firewalls and decrypting code, trembled slightly as she typed her response. Acknowledged. Systems are go. Ready to provide support, standing by.
She hit send, and a new window immediately popped open. It was a secure, encrypted comm link, directly to Ash's Pokanov. A simple message was waiting for her.
Thanks, Penny. Glad to have you on the team. Get some rest. Big day tomorrow.
Penny stared at the message, a slow, shy smile spreading across her face. The server room didn't feel so dark and lonely anymore. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just working for the League. She was part of something. She was part of his team. And she would not let him down. The drive to Artisan the next morning was surprisingly quiet. Rika had insisted they take her rugged, open-top Jeep instead of a sterile League vehicle. The rising sun cast a golden glow over the rolling hills of East Province, and the air was crisp and clean. Ash sat in the passenger seat, Pikachu now wide awake and perched on the dashboard, his ears flapping in the wind. Rika drove with a relaxed, confident ease, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gearshift.
She hadn't spoken much since they left Mesagoza, her usual stream of playful banter replaced by a focused, observant silence. She kept glancing at him out of the corner of her eye, that same assessing look she'd had in the conference room. Finally, as they passed the massive, sun-drenched sculptures that marked the outskirts of the town, she broke the silence. You know, she said, her voice a low, throaty purr that was almost lost in the wind, I've been in that conference room with Gita for 2 years. I've seen her stare down cocky challengers, smarmy businessmen, and stuffy politicians. I have never, not once, seen anyone make her back down. She glanced at him, a genuine curiosity in her eyes. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't threaten her. You just took the room. How'd you do that? Ash watched the windmills of Artisan begin to appear on the horizon. Gita sees everything as a series of logical steps. She had a plan that made sense on paper. But our opponent isn't logical. I just offered a plan that fit the opponent we're actually facing, not the one she wanted to face. That's it? She asked, a hint of skepticism in her tone. A better strategy? That's what made her fold? No, Ash said, turning to look at her. She folded because Hassel and Larry and you agreed with me. She wasn't beaten by my logic. She was beaten by her own team siding with someone else. A leader is only as strong as the people who follow them. Rika was silent for a long moment, processing that. He hadn't just outmaneuvered Gita. He had understood the fundamental dynamics of the group better than she did. He had seen them not as subordinates, but as individuals, and had appealed to their core natures. Hassel's heart, Larry's desire for efficiency, and her own thirst for real action. Huh, she said, a slow smile spreading across her face. You're a lot smarter than you look, champion. I get that a lot, he said with a grin. Pika Pika. Pikachu chimed in defensively from the dashboard. Rika's laugh was a throaty, genuine sound that echoed across the fields. Don't worry, little guy. I mean it as a compliment.
They pulled into Artisan's Central Plaza, and the atmosphere was immediately unsettling. The town was known for its vibrant, artistic energy, but today, a palpable sense of anxiety hung in the air. People were gathered in small groups, murmuring to each other. The usual cheerful music that played from the town's speakers was absent. The place felt muted, the colors just a little less bright. The power was back on, but the shadow of the 3-hour blackout remained.
Their first stop was the Artisan Gym, a whimsical structure that looked like a cross between a gallery and a greenhouse. Inside, they found the gym leader, Brassius, in a state of artistic despair. He was slumped in a chair, dramatically fanning himself with his leafy hat, surrounded by several half-finished sunflora sculptures. Ah, Rika. And the new champion, he lamented, his voice dripping with theatrical woe. You have come to witness the horror, the tragedy, the creative inertia. Easy there, Brass, Rika said, patting his shoulder. We're here to figure out what happened. Just tell us what you saw. What I saw? Brassius exclaimed, leaping to his feet. Nothing. That was the horror of it. One moment, my power sander was singing its beautiful song of creation, the next, silence. A void. A sudden, crushing emptiness that plunged my soul, and my workshop, into darkness. 3 hours, I was adrift in a sea of unlit potential. My inspiration, it wilted. While Brassius continued his dramatic retelling, Ash's Pokénav buzzed. He discreetly checked the screen. It was Penny. Less than com link. Penny greater than I'm in. I've bypassed the local grid's firewall and I'm accessing the generator logs. Gita's techs are still trying to get the right password. Amateurs. Ash smiled to himself. Less than com link. Ash, anything useful?
Less than com link. Penny greater than standby. The logs are weird. There's no record of a surge or a failure. The energy output just flatlines. For exactly 180 minutes. The system didn't register an error because as far as it was concerned, nothing was wrong. The power wasn't cut. It was nullified. One more thing. The drain wasn't simultaneous across the town. It started at a single point and spread outwards, like a wave.
Ash's eyes narrowed. Less than com link. Ash, can you pinpoint the origin? Less than com link. Penny, triangulating, got it. The epicenter of the energy drain was the town's highest point. The giant windmill on the hill overlooking the sunflower lawn. Ash looked at Rika, who was expertly calming Brassius down. We need to see the main windmill, he said, cutting through the gym leader's monologue. Brassius blinked. The windmill? But it is merely a decorative landmark, a testament to the harmony between nature and. Just show us the way, Brass, Rika said, her tone leaving no room for argument.
The windmill stood on a breezy hill, its massive blades turning slowly in the wind. It was an old, beautiful structure, but as they got closer, Ash felt a strange stillness in the air, a faint hum of residual energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. Pikachu felt it too, his cheeks sparking nervously.
This is the place, Ash murmured. Rika knelt down, placing a hand on the earth. She closed her eyes, her expression focused. After a long moment, she looked up, her face pale. The ground here, it feels wrong. Tired. Like it's been leached of all its life. My Clodsire would hate it. Ash's comm link buzzed again. Less than comm link. Penny, champion, I'm detecting a faint, residual energy signature inside the windmill's primary generator room. It's decaying rapidly, but it's a match. It's the same energy from Area 0. Whatever happened, it happened right where you're standing. Less than comm link. Ash, going in. The door to the windmill's maintenance room was locked. Ash didn't hesitate. He summoned his Corviknight, and with a single, powerful steel wing, the reinforced metal door was peeled open like a tin can. Inside, the air was cold and heavy. The central generator, a massive, usually humming piece of machinery, was silent. But it wasn't the silence that was unnerving. It was the thing in the center of the room.
On the floor, directly beneath the main energy conduit, was a pattern. It was a complex, swirling fractal of crystallized dust, glowing with a faint, sickly purple light. It looked like a fossil, an imprint of something that had been there for a moment and then vanished. In the center of the pattern was a single, larger crystal, about the size of a fist, pulsing with a slow, weak light, like a dying heart.
What in the name of Paldea is that? Rika breathed, her hand instinctively going to a Pokeball on her belt. Pikachu whimpered, hiding behind Ash's leg.
Before Ash could answer, the crystal in the center of the pattern flared. The faint hum in the air intensified into a high-pitched whine. The lights in the room flickered, and the generator sputtered to life, then died again. The crystallized dust began to swirl, lifting from the floor and coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. It had no face, no features, just a shimmering, unstable form of pure, negative energy.
Less than comm link. Penny, Ash, get out of there, there's a massive energy spike, it's reforming. The ghost in the machine had a body. It wasn't a Pokemon. It was something else entirely, a being of pure, consumed energy. And it was looking right at them. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. The Ghost in the Machine. The thing made of crystallized dust and stolen light did not have a mouth, but the room filled with a soundless scream. It was a pressure inside the skull, a wave of pure despair and agony that made Ash's teeth ache. The air grew frigid. The single, pulsing crystal at its core flared with a malevolent purple light, and the energy conduit on the ceiling above it sparked violently, letting out a shower of ozone-scented sparks.
Rika, stay back, Ash commanded, stepping in front of her. He didn't reach for a pokeball. His instincts, honed by countless encounters with forces beyond normal understanding, screamed that this was not a physical threat. Attacking it with brute force would be like trying to punch a storm.
Pikachu! Pikachu leapt from behind his leg, sparks flying from his cheeks, his small body a defiant ball of courage against the spectral horror. What is that thing? Rika's voice was tight, her hand frozen on the pokeball at her belt. Her playful demeanor was gone, replaced by the grim focus of an Elite Four member facing a true unknown. It's a footprint, Ash said, his eyes narrowed, trying to read the entity's movements, its energy. It's what the energy drain left behind. Penny, are you seeing this? His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the psychic shriek filling the room. He spoke into his wrist, where the Pokénov's comm was still active. Penny's voice came back, strained and tinny, laced with panic. I see it, the energy readings are. They're impossible. It's not consuming power anymore, it's consuming potential. It's trying to nullify the generator's connection to the grid. It's an anti-energy. The entity's form wavered, and a long, shimmering tendril of purple dust shot out, not at them, but at the main generator. It's trying to feed again, Ash realized. Pikachu, don't use Thunderbolt, use Electroweb. Pin it down. Pikachu understood instantly. He leapt into the air, and instead of a destructive bolt, he spat out a shimmering, crackling net of golden electricity. The web flew through the air and enveloped the spectral form. The effect was instantaneous and bizarre. The moment the electrical energy of the web made contact, the entity convulsed. It didn't scream in pain. It screamed in what felt like rage and revulsion. The electroweb, designed to hold and shock, was instead being unraveled. The golden threads of energy were turning a dull, lifeless gray before dissolving into nothingness. The entity was eating the attack. But it had worked. The diversion had stopped its advance on the generator. It's feeding on the energy, Rika exclaimed, finally grasping the creature's nature. Any attack we use will just make it stronger. Not every attack, Ash countered, his mind racing. It doesn't like the energy. It's not strengthening it, it's neutralizing it. We just need to give it more than it can handle. Rika, I need your strongest Pokémon. One with overwhelming physical power. Rika didn't hesitate. Her trust in his command was absolute. Dugtrio, no, Clodsire, let's go. She threw her Pokeball, and her massive, dopey-looking Clodsire appeared with a soft, squelching sound. It blinked its vacant eyes at the terrifying energy form and let out a placid gurgle, utterly unfazed. Perfect, Ash said. Rika, have Clodsire use Mud Slap, not to do damage, but to disrupt its form. Pikachu, keep firing electrowebs. Don't let it settle. We're not trying to hurt it. We're trying to chase it off. It was a strategy born of pure intuition, a complete reversal of normal battle tactics. They weren't fighting to win. They were performing an exorcism. Clodsire, you heard the man, Mud Slap, full blast, Rika commanded. The gentle giant opened its mouth and spat a rapid-fire volley of thick, wet mud. The globs of earth passed through the entity's shimmering form, but not without effect. Each impact caused the spectral dust to scatter, disrupting its cohesion. At the same time, Pikachu fired another electroweb, forcing the creature to focus on dissolving the net instead of reforming. It was working. The entity, battered by the physical mud and force-fed a diet of electrical energy it clearly found repellent, began to destabilize.
Its psychic shriek intensified, a final, frustrated wave of malice, and then, with a sound like shattering glass, the central crystal cracked. The form of crystallized dust collapsed, falling to the floor in a shower of inert, gray particles. The oppressive cold in the room vanished, and the only sounds were their own heavy breathing and Clodsire's happy gurgle.
The crystal on the floor was now just a dull, fractured rock. The threat was gone. For a long moment, nobody moved. Ash knelt down, examining the gray dust on the floor. It was cold to the touch, with no residual energy. It was like the ash of a fire that had burned out completely. Penny's voice crackled over the comm, breathless. It's gone. The energy signature just flatlined. Zero. Completely vanished. Ash, what just happened? We met the ghost, Ash said, standing up. He looked at Rika, whose face was pale but whose eyes were shining with a mixture of adrenaline and awe. She was looking at him, at the calm, decisive way he had taken command, analyzed an impossible opponent, and formulated a winning, nonviolent strategy in seconds. That thing, Rika breathed, recalling her Clodsire with a shaky hand, that wasn't a Pokémon. No, Ash agreed. It was something else. And it left that crystal behind like a calling card. He turned his attention back to his Pokénav. Penny, you said the energy drain spread like a wave from this windmill. That means this thing can travel. And now it knows we're hunting it. What's our next move, champion? Penny's voice was steadier now, her fear replaced by a focused, intellectual curiosity. She was addressing him, not Rika, the Elite Four member. In that moment, he was her commander.
Our next move is to get out of the field, Ash said decisively. This isn't something we can solve by chasing it from town to town. It's intelligent, it's adaptable, and it's connected to Area Zero. The information you have is more valuable than anything else right now. Rika and I are coming back to Mesagoza. I want to see everything you have, Penny. In person.
My lab? Penny stammered, the confidence wavering. Here? That's where the data is, isn't it? Ash said. That's where the real fight is going to be. We'll be there in 2 hours. He ended the transmission. Rika just stared at him, a slow, impressed smile returning to her face. Your lab? She teased gently. Poor girl probably just had a heart attack. You sure know how to charm him, boss. Ash ignored the jibe, though a faint warmth touched his cheeks. His focus was already on the next step. Let's go. This is just the beginning. As they walked out of the windmill and into the bright Paldean sunshine, neither of them noticed the single, fractured shard of the purple crystal on the floor begin to glow with a faint, almost imperceptible light before dissolving into nothing. The ghost was gone from Artazan, but it was far from vanquished. It had merely changed its hunting ground.
The League's Special Projects and Cybersecurity Division was located in the sublevels of the Academy Spire, a world away from the sunlit, optimistic architecture above. The corridors were stark white, the lighting was a cool, efficient LED blue, and the air hummed with the quiet, powerful thrum of massive server banks. It was a place of pure data, cold and logical. It was Penny's sanctuary. She stood outside the frosted glass door to her main lab, wringing her hands nervously. She had spent the last hour and a half frantically tidying up, which mostly consisted of hiding empty noodle cups and stacking her technical manuals into neat, orderly piles. She had even changed out of her baggy hoodie into a slightly less baggy but still comfortable League-issue pullover.
The champion and an Elite Four member were coming to her lab. To see her. The thought sent alternating waves of pride and sheer, gut-wrenching terror through her. The hiss of the corridor's access door announced their arrival. Ash and Rika rounded the corner, and Penny felt her breath catch in her throat. Seeing them on a screen was one thing. In person, they were overwhelming. Rika moved with the lazy, confident grace of a predator, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the sterile environment with an amused smirk. Ash was even more intense. He walked with a quiet purpose, his presence filling the corridor. He wasn't as tall as she'd imagined, but he carried himself with an aura of authority that had nothing to do with height. He gave her a small, reassuring smile, and her anxiety lessened by a crucial 10%. Penny, he said, his voice calm and warm, thanks for seeing us. Champion, she stammered, pushing her glasses up her nose. Miss Rika. Welcome to, the office. Rika's smirk widened. Cozy, she drawled, peering through the glass into the lab, which was dominated by a semicircular array of glowing monitors. Lots of screens. You get good reception down here in the basement? The entire sublevel is a Faraday cage shielded against electromagnetic interference, Penny recited automatically, her brain switching to its technical comfort zone. The only signals that get in or out are the ones I personally authorize through the primary fiber optic conduit. Right, Rika said, blinking. So that's a yes, then. Ash stepped forward, his expression serious. Penny, what have you found? The directness of the question was a lifeline. This was business. This was data. This, she could handle. This way, she said, her confidence returning. She pressed her thumb to a biometric scanner, and the frosted glass door hissed open. The lab was exactly as Rika had envisioned. A digital command center. The main console showed a holographic map of Paldea, overlaid with dozens of complex data streams. A small, fluffy Eevee plushie was perched on top of one of the monitors, the only spot of personal warmth in the entire room. I've been tracking the decay of the residual energy you encountered in Artazan, Penny began, her fingers flying across a keyboard, bringing up a new set of charts and graphs. The energy signature didn't just disappear. It sublimated. It broke down into microscopic, undetectable packets and piggybacked onto the regional power grid. From there, it followed the main data conduits. She typed another command, and a glowing red line appeared on the holographic map, snaking its way from Artazan all the way back to their current location. It followed the energy flow right back here, to Mesagoza, to the League headquarters. Rika swore under her breath. So the thing followed us home? Not us, Penny corrected, her voice barely a whisper. Me. It tracked the open comm link from my terminal to your Pokénav, champion. It used my signal as a homing beacon.
A sudden, chilling realization dawned on Ash. The entity wasn't just a mindless energy parasite. It was a hunter. And it was learning. It had tasted his terrestrial energy, tracked his communications, and now it had followed them to the very heart of the League's network. As if on cue, the main lights in the lab flickered. Once, twice. Then they went out, plunging the room into an eerie darkness, illuminated only by the glow of the monitors and the holographic map. A heavy thunk echoed from the corridor as the magnetic locks on the lab door engaged.
Penny? Ash's voice was sharp, alert. What was that? That wasn't me, she squeaked, frantically typing at her console. The locks have been engaged externally. I'm locked out of the system. Something is overriding my admin privileges.
On the main monitor, the complex data streams dissolved into static, replaced by a single, swirling fractal of purple light. The same pattern they had seen on the floor of the windmill. A low, humming sound began to fill the room, emanating from the server banks that lined the walls. It's in the system, Rika said, her voice a low growl. She had already pulled 2 Pokeballs from her belt. The ghost is in the machine. The humming grew louder, and several of the ceiling panels popped open. From the darkness above, sleek, metallic drones dropped down, their single red optical sensors glowing to life. They were League-issue security drones, the kind used to patrol the perimeter at night. But their movements were wrong. Jerky, aggressive, and utterly silent. There were at least a dozen of them, and they were forming a circle, trapping the 3 of them in the center of the lab.
Penny, can you get the system back? Ash asked, his voice never rising, a steady anchor in the sudden chaos. He and Rika had already moved, placing themselves back to back, shielding Penny and her console. I can try, she stammered, her fingers a blur on the keyboard. But it's fighting me, it's everywhere, it's like a virus made of nightmares. One of the drones whirred and aimed a small appendage at them. A beam of superheated plasma shot out, striking the floor where Ash had been standing a second before, leaving a sizzling, molten scar on the tile. That's not a standard feature, Rika noted dryly, her Glimora and Clodsire materializing beside her in flashes of red light. It must be overclocking their power cores. Penny cried out. It's going to cause them to explode.
Then we don't have much time, Ash said, his expression grim. Corviknight, Sceptile, let's go.
His 2 Pokémon appeared, ready for battle. The cramped lab was suddenly a chaotic battlefield. Corviknight, use Steel Wing. Take out the ones on the ceiling. Sceptile, Leaf Blade. Dismantle them before they can fire, Ash commanded. Glimora, use Power Gem. Clodsire, you're on defense. Use Protect, Rika yelled. The battle began. Corviknight became a metallic blur, soaring through the upper reaches of the lab, its steel-hard wings shearing through the drone's chassis with sickening crunches. Sceptile moved like a green phantom on the floor, its arm blades a whirlwind of surgical strikes that disabled the drone's weapon systems. Rika's Glimora fired shimmering, crystalline projectiles that blasted 2 drones out of the air, while her Clodsire stood like a fortress in front of Penny's console, a shimmering green barrier appearing around it to absorb a stray plasma blast. But for every drone they took down, 2 more seemed to drop from the ceiling panels. They were being swarmed. This is a losing fight, Rika grunted, sidestepping a blast that singed her hair. We're just swatting flies. The nest is in the machine. Penny, Ash called out, not taking his eyes off the fight. His septile had just neatly decapitated a drone, only for another to take its place. How much time do you need? He didn't ask if she could do it. He asked when. The absolute, unquestioning faith in his voice was a jolt to Penny's system, more potent than any energy drink. He was fighting a dozen weaponized robots, and his primary concern was giving her the time she needed to work. He was protecting her. He was trusting her. A fire she hadn't felt since her days as the leader of Team Star ignited in her chest. This was her domain. Her network. And this spectral parasite was an intruder. Just keep them off me, she yelled back, her voice ringing with newfound determination. Her fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was being burned away by the heat of her resolve. Her fingers moved with impossible speed, a blur of motion. She wasn't just typing anymore, she was waging war. Lines of code scrolled across her screen at a nauseating rate as she battled the entity for control of the network's core programming.
It was a digital duel. The entity was a chaotic, destructive force, overriding protocols with raw, malicious energy. Penny, in response, was precise, elegant, and creative. She didn't meet its brute force head-on. She rerouted its commands, trapped its subroutines in inescapable logic loops, and built digital fortresses around the system's most critical functions.
It was like watching a master composer write a symphony in the middle of a hurricane. It's learning from my firewalls, she shouted over the din of battle. It's adapting every time I block it. Then don't block it, redirect it, Ash yelled, recalling his septile an instant before a drone self-destructed, sending a wave of shrapnel across the room. Corviknight was single-handedly holding the line in the air, but it was taking heavy damage. Can you isolate it? Trap it somewhere? Trap it. The idea sparked in Penny's mind. A digital cage. She couldn't delete the entity. It wasn't a program she could simply uninstall. It was a consciousness. But she could build it a prison.
I can try, she said, her plan forming in real time. I can create a ghost partition, a closed-off section of the server with no external access, and then trick the entity into moving its core consciousness there. But I'll need to lower the main network's defenses for a few seconds to lure it in. When I do, all the drones will get a massive power surge.
How long is a few seconds? Rika demanded, her Glimmora's power gem attacks starting to weaken. 5, maybe 6 seconds, tops, Penny replied. Ash didn't hesitate. Do it. We'll hold the line.
That was it. No questions. No doubts. Just a simple, powerful declaration of trust. Rika shot him a look, a mixture of disbelief and sheer, unadulterated respect. This man's faith in his people was insane. And incredibly inspiring.
All right, champion, she said, a grim smile on her face. Let's get crazy. Clodsire, get ready to use Yawn on my mark. Glimmora, save your energy. Get ready. Penny shouted, her eyes wide, staring at a progress bar on her screen. I'm lowering the firewall, now. The moment she hit the key, every drone in the room went berserk. Their red eyes glowed with ferocious intensity, and their plasma cannons began to whine, charging for a massive, simultaneous blast. The humming in the server banks rose to a deafening roar. Corviknight, Iron Defense, Ash commanded. Clodsire, Yawn, now, Rika screamed.
Corviknight folded its wings, its metallic body glowing as it braced for impact. At the same time, Clodsire let out a huge, bubbling yawn. A series of lazy, pink bubbles floated through the air, not toward the drones, but into the space between them and the trainers. It was an unconventional, seemingly useless move.
The drones fired. A dozen beams of white-hot plasma converged on their position.
But just before the beams hit, they passed through the sleep-inducing bubbles from Yawn. The effect wasn't on the drones themselves, but on the energy. The plasma beams, saturated with the soporific power, seemed to lose their intensity, their cohesion. They struck Corviknight's armored form not as focused lances of destruction, but as a sloppy, dissipated wave of heat. The Pokémon grunted, pushed back several feet, but it held. The line was held.
Got it. Penny shrieked in triumph. She slammed her hand down on the enter key. On the main screen, the swirling purple fractal was suddenly sucked into a black square that appeared in the corner of the monitor before vanishing. A final, psychic screech of pure rage echoed through the lab, and then, silence.
Every single drone in the room powered down, their red eyes fading to black. They dropped from the ceiling and clattered to the floor like discarded toys. The emergency lights flickered on, casting the ruined lab in a stark, red glow. The magnetic lock on the door disengaged with a soft click. It was over. Ash and Rika recalled their exhausted Pokemon, their chests heaving. The floor was littered with smoking metal and scarred tiles. In the center of the chaos, Penny slumped back in her chair, her entire body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion. She had done it.
Ash walked over to her console, his movements weary but steady. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You did it, Penny. You saved us."
Penny looked up at him, her glasses askew, her face pale. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the profound gratitude. He wasn't looking at her like a shy-tech girl who needed saving. He was looking at her like an equal, a vital member of his team who had just won the most important battle. A wave of warmth, so powerful it made her dizzy, washed over her.
We did it," she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her dusty cheek.
Rika sauntered over, leaning against the console and letting out a long, low whistle as she surveyed the damage. "Well, I'll say one thing for your ghost, kid. It knows how to throw a party." She looked from Penny's trembling form to Ash's steadying hand on her shoulder. She saw the way Penny was looking at him, with a kind of hero worship that was rapidly evolving into something deeper. And she saw the way Ash looked at Penny, with pure, unadulterated pride and trust.
A slow, knowing smile touched Rika's lips. Things were getting very, very interesting. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "what did you name your new pet project you've got locked in that box?"
Penny looked at the black square on her monitor, the digital prison holding a consciousness of pure malice. She thought of the place it had come from, the origin point of all this chaos.
"Subject Zero," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of its strength back. "I'm calling it Subject Zero." Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The wild hunt. The harsh red of the emergency lighting painted the ruined lab in shades of blood and rust.
The silence that followed the chaotic battle was heavy, broken only by the hum of the single-server bank now housing their digital ghost. Rika was leaning against a scorched wall, surveying the dozens of inert, broken drones with a critical eye. Penny, still trembling slightly, was running diagnostics, her face a mask of intense concentration as she reinforced the digital walls of Subject Zero's prison. Ash stood in the middle of it all, a still point in the turning world. He was looking at the black square on Penny's monitor, the cage holding the entity, but his thoughts were miles away, deep in the earth of Area Zero. This wasn't just a monster they had to fight. It was a symptom of a much larger sickness. The hiss of the corridor door sliding open broke the quiet. Top champion Gita swept into the room, her presence a wave of icy authority. Her Glimora floated silently behind her. She stopped just inside the doorway, her gaze taking in the scene of utter devastation with an unreadable expression. Her eyes lingered for a moment on the shattered drones, the molten floor, and the three people who looked like they had just survived a war. Finally, her gaze settled on Ash. "I was alerted to a level 7 security breach and a complete communications blackout in this sector," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "My overrides were ineffective." "Explain." "We had an intruder," Ash said simply, turning to face her. He didn't sound defensive or apologetic. He sounded like a commander giving an after-action report.
Rika pushed herself off the wall, a lazy, defiant smirk on her lips. "Your ghost wasn't a sensor error after all, Primera. It paid us a little house call. Got a bit messy."
Gita's gaze flickered to Penny, who flinched under the scrutiny. "Miss Penny, you will file a full report on the system breach and the damage to League property." Before Penny could stammer out a reply, Ash stepped slightly, positioning himself between her and Gita. "Penny did her job," he said, his voice firm. "She contained a threat that would have torn this entire network apart. She did it while under direct attack from your own security drones, which had been turned against us. If you want a report, I'll give you one. Our security is a joke, and we were completely unprepared for a non-physical assault. This can't happen again." The challenge was unmistakable. He wasn't just defending his team, he was critiquing her leadership, her preparedness. Gita's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering along her cheek. For the second time in 24 hours, he had completely undermined her authority, this time in the smoking ruins of her own facility. And your solution, champion? She asked, her voice dripping with scorn. More reckless field trips. No, Ash said. An offensive. We now know what this thing is, and we know where it came from. We're done reacting. It's time to take the fight to it. Just as he spoke, a frantic alarm began to blare from Penny's console. It wasn't a security alert. It was a rapid-fire series of notifications from the Regional Terrestrial Energy Monitoring Network. What is it now? Rika groaned. Penny's face went pale. Oh no, no. She brought the map of Paldea up on the main screen. A massive, pulsing red blotch was spreading across the western desert. The Asado Desert. What am I looking at? Ash demanded, moving to her side. It's Subject Zero, Penny explained, her voice trembling. I have it contained, but it's not dormant. It's screaming. It's broadcasting its consciousness, its pain, on a low-level frequency I can't block. It's resonating with the natural terrestrial energy in the environment. She pointed a shaky finger at the red zone on the map. Wild Pokemon in the desert, they're all starting to terrestrialize. Spontaneously. But the energy is corrupted. It's unstable. It's driving them into a frenzy. On the screen, satellite imagery began to filter in, confirming her words. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of glowing, crystallized Pokemon were stampeding across the desert sands. They weren't moving randomly. They were moving with a purpose, a single, unified wave of rage and pain. A red arrow on the map indicated their trajectory.
They're heading straight for Kaskarafa, Rika said, her voice grim. The city, famous for its grand waterfalls and intricate aqueducts, was directly in the path of the berserk herd. The potential for destruction was immense. Gita stared at the screen, her composure finally shattering into visible shock. Her logic, her carefully ordered world, had no framework for this. A stampede of corrupted, terrestrialized Pokemon driven by a digital ghost. It was the definition of an illogical crisis. Ash, however, saw it with perfect clarity. The ghost in the machine was now a rampaging army. He turned away from the screen, his expression set and resolute. This is on us. We'll stop it. How? Gita asked, the question a genuine, desperate plea for an answer. You cannot possibly fight an army of that size.
We won't have to, Ash said, already moving toward the door. Rika, I need your Jeep. It's faster than any League vehicle. Penny, you're our eye in the sky. Feed us real-time data on the herd's movement and composition. We'll need to know what we're running into. You want me to coordinate from here? Penny asked, her eyes wide. You're the only one who can, Ash stated, his faith in her absolute. Rika and I will handle the ground. He was already in the corridor when a new voice, sharp and breathless, cut through the tension. You're not going without me. Nemona stood at the end of the hall, her school uniform disheveled, her chest heaving as if she'd run all the way from the Pokemon Center. Her Pomot was at her side, its fur bristling with agitation. She must have heard the alarms, felt the crisis in the air. Her eyes, however, weren't burning with the desire for a battle. They were burning with a fierce, protective fire.
I heard the alerts, she panted, her gaze locked on Ash. Something big is happening. Something that threatens this whole region. I'm not going to stand by and watch. Whatever it is, I'm fighting with you. This wasn't a request for a rivalry match. It was a soldier reporting for duty. Ash looked at her, at the unwavering loyalty in her eyes, and saw not a challenger, but an indispensable ally. A partner. All right, he said with a decisive nod. You're with me, let's move. Gita watched them go. Ash, the decisive leader, Rika, the loyal field commander. And Nemona, the unstoppable force of nature now bound to his cause. They were a unit, forged in a crisis she couldn't comprehend, and they were leaving her behind in the wreckage of her own sterile, logical world. For the first time, she felt utterly, terrifyingly powerless. She looked at Penny, who was already coordinating with the others, her hands flying across the keyboard, a vital cog in Ash's machine. Gita was the top champion of Paldea, and in that moment, she was the only one in the room without a purpose.
The Asado Desert was a furnace. The sun beat down on the cracked earth, and heat shimmered in waves off the sand. Rika's jeep tore across the landscape, kicking up a massive plume of dust. Ash rode in the passenger seat, Nemona and Pomot were in the back, and Pikachu was on the dashboard, his small nose twitching, sensing the corrupted energy on the wind. I'm tracking them 5 miles ahead of your position, Penny's voice crackled through the jeep's comm system. The vanguard is mostly Donphan, Tyranitar, and a whole lot of angry Sandaconda. They're moving fast. You have maybe 10 minutes until they hit the Kaskaroffa provincial aqueduct. If they damage that, the city loses its main water source, Rika yelled over the roar of the engine. This is a full-blown catastrophe. We're not going to let that happen, Ash said, his eyes scanning the horizon. Penny, what's the terrain like up ahead? There's a box canyon 2 miles to the west of their current path, she replied instantly. Narrow opening, high walls. If you could steer them into it, you could contain the majority of them. Steer a stampede of angry, crystallized juggernauts. Nemona said from the back, a wild, excited grin on her face. Sounds like fun. How do we do it? Like herding toros, Ash said, a plan forming in his mind. We don't stop them with force. We redirect them. We'll create a wall of attacks on their eastern flank, push them west. Nemona, you and I are the spearhead. We'll hit the leaders, get their attention, and make them turn. Rika, you're the wall. You'll use your Pokemon to create a barrier of ground and rock attacks to keep them from turning back east. A battle of endurance and strategy, Nemona breathed, her eyes sparkling. I love it. Got it, boss, Rika said, her hands tightening on the wheel as she pushed the jeep even faster. They crested a dune, and the sight below stole their breath. It was an ocean of shimmering, furious Pokemon. The terrestrial energy surrounding them wasn't the beautiful, multifaceted glow of a trainer's Pokemon. It was a jagged, ugly, purple-black corruption that seemed to crackle with pain. The Pokemon's eyes glowed with the same malevolent light, and their cries were a chorus of agony. Ash's expression hardened, but not with anger. It was with a profound, aching empathy. He could feel their suffering. This wasn't an army of monsters. It was a crowd of victims, lashing out because they were in unimaginable pain. New plan, he said, his voice low and firm. Our primary objective has changed. It's not just about containing them. It's about saving them. No knockout blows. We use non-lethal force only. We subdue, we redirect, but we do not critically injure a single one of them. Understood. Nemona looked from the pained, rampaging Pokemon to the sudden, fierce compassion in Ash's eyes. Her desire for a thrilling battle evaporated, replaced by a surge of fierce admiration. He wasn't just a strong trainer. He was a good man. Understood, Ash, she said, her voice filled with a new depth of respect. Let's do it, Rika said, her voice grim. She wrenched the wheel, sending the jeep skidding to a halt at the edge of the herd. They leapt out before the vehicle had even fully stopped. Let's go, Ash yelled, pulling a Pokeball from his belt. Donphan, I choose you. Lycanroc, time to run wild. Nemona roared, releasing her own Pokemon. The battle, the wild hunt, began. Ash and Nemona charged toward the front of the herd, a two-person vanguard against a tide of corrupted power. A massive, crystallized Tyranitar, its body pulsing with dark energy, turned to face them, letting out a roar that shook the very ground. Donphan, roll out. Lycanroc, Accelerock. Ash and Nemona commanded in near-perfect unison. The two Pokemon shot forward, Donphan a spinning sphere of destruction and Lycanroc a streak of razor-sharp rock. They didn't aim for the Tyranitar's body. They aimed for the ground in front of it. The coordinated impacts created a massive explosion of sand and rock, forcing the giant creature to stumble and alter its course, turning slightly to the west. It's working, Nemona shouted, her laughter ringing with exhilaration. Behind them, Rika had deployed her team. Her massive Dugtrio used Sand Tomb, creating swirling vortexes of sand that acted as a soft barrier on the herd's eastern flank. Her Orthworm used its massive body to create a living wall, while her Clodsire spat globs of sticky mud, not to harm, but to slow the Pokemon and make the terrain to the east less appealing. The dance was chaotic and beautiful. Ash and Nemona fought with a synergy that defied belief. They moved as one unit, their commands overlapping, their Pokemon weaving between each other in a flawless pattern. Ash's Sceptile used Leaf Storm not to slash, but to create visual barriers. Nemona's Gudra used Sludge Bomb to create slick, impassable patches of ground. They were artists, painting a new path for the river of rampaging Pokémon, guiding it with precision and a deep, abiding respect for the creatures they were fighting. But the Pokémon were fighting back, their attacks wild and desperate. A corrupted Donphan charged, its body glowing with Terra ground energy. Ash's own Donphan met it head on, not with an attack, but with a defensive iron defense, absorbing the blow and pushing the wild Pokémon westward. Pikachu! Electroweb! Ash yelled. A golden net shot out, not to trap, but to entangle the horns of a charging Tauros, causing it to trip and tumble safely away from the main herd. It was the most difficult battle any of them had ever fought. It required more control, more stamina, and more heart than any championship match. Ash was at the center of it all, his commands a constant, calming presence in the storm. He was everywhere at once, protecting Nemona from a stray hyper beam, directing Rika's placement of a new sand wall, always pushing, always guiding, always protecting. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to succeed. The head of the herd was turning, veering toward the dark slash in the landscape that marked the entrance to the box canyon. You're doing it. Penny's voice cheered over the calm. The main body is shifting course. Another half a mile and you'll have them contained. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, the massive Tyranitar they had first engaged let out a roar of pure, unadulterated agony. The corrupted terrestrial energy around it flared violently, and with a burst of terrifying speed, it broke away from the herd. It ignored their barriers, smashing through a sand tomb with a brutal stone edge attack. It wasn't heading for the canyon. It was making a straight line for the shimmering ribbon of water on the horizon, the Kaskarafa Aqueduct. It broke through. Rika yelled in alarm. I'll handle it. Ash shouted, not missing a beat. Nemona, Rika, you keep the main herd moving toward the canyon. Don't let them follow it. Ash, you can't fight that thing alone. Nemona cried out, her heart seizing with fear. He won't be alone, Ash said, glancing at the yellow partner on his shoulder. Pikachu, let's go. Without another word, he broke off from the main battle, sprinting across the desert in pursuit of the rampaging Tyranitar. It was a race against time. The Tyranitar was a living engine of destruction, its crystallized armor deflecting the harsh desert sun. It reached the massive stone pillars of the aqueduct and reared back, its claws glowing with dark energy, ready to bring the entire structure down. Pikachu, use quick attack. Get its attention. Pikachu became a yellow blur, rocketing across the sand and slamming into the Tyranitar's leg. The attack was like a pebble hitting a mountain, but it did the trick. The giant beast forgot the aqueduct and turned its rage-filled eyes on the tiny mouse Pokémon. It swiped with its massive claws, an attack that could shatter boulders. Dodge and use Iron Tail on its knee. Ash commanded. Pikachu moved with impossible agility, the claws missing by a hair's breadth. He flipped in midair, his tail glowing like polished steel, and brought it down hard on the Tyranitar's knee joint. The beast roared in pain and surprise, its leg buckling. It wasn't a knockout blow, but a strategic, disabling strike. The Tyranitar, enraged, opened its mouth, gathering the dark energy for a hyper beam. We're not going to beat it with power, buddy, Ash said, his voice soft but clear. We're going to remind it who it is. He held up his hand, and his Terra orb began to glow with a brilliant, warm light. Let's show it our harmony. Terrastalize. The beam of pure, controlled energy shot out, enveloping Pikachu. But this time, something different happened. Ash wasn't channeling combat power. He was channeling his empathy, his deep, unwavering connection to all Pokémon. The terrestrial energy that formed above Pikachu's head wasn't the jagged, aggressive crown of an electric type. It was a soft, glowing orb of pure normal type energy, a beacon of stability and calm. The charging hyper beam in the Tyranitar's mouth fizzled out, its rage momentarily quelled by the pure, gentle energy radiating from Pikachu. Its glowing red eyes flickered, a hint of confusion breaking through the pain. That's it, buddy, Ash whispered, taking a slow step forward, his hands open and non-threatening. Terra Blast. But don't hurt it. Just let it feel. Pikachu nodded. He gathered the gentle, normalized Terra energy and released it, not as a beam of destruction, but as a soft, warm wave of light. The wave washed over the Tyranitar. It didn't explode. It didn't scorch. It simply embraced it. The Tyranitar shuddered, its massive body trembling. The corrupted, purple-black crystals covering its body began to flicker and fade, the raw, painful energy being soothed and neutralized by Pikachu's pure Terra wave. The rage in its eyes dissolved, replaced by exhaustion. With a low, final groan, the massive Pokémon slumped to the ground, the last of the corrupted energy flaking off its body like dead skin. It wasn't unconscious. It was just asleep. The pain was gone. Ash walked forward and placed a hand gently on the giant creature's snout. It was finally at peace. The sun was setting by the time Nemona and Rika found him, casting long, dramatic shadows across the desert. The rest of the herd had been successfully guided into the box canyon, where they were now slowly, one by one, calming down as the corrupted energy dissipated. Nemona ran the last few yards, her heart in her throat. She saw the massive, sleeping Tyranitar, the peacefully resting Pikachu, and Ash, standing beside them, looking out at the horizon. She stopped, breathless, taking in the scene. He had faced down an army. He had saved a city. And he had done it not just with overwhelming power, but with an even more overwhelming compassion. The adrenaline of the day, the fear she'd felt when he ran off alone, the sheer awe of watching him fight, it all coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. She walked up to him, her usual boisterous energy gone, replaced by a quiet, profound intensity. "Ash," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He turned to face her, a tired but gentle smile on his face. "Hey, you did it. You saved them." "We saved them," she corrected, taking a step closer. Her eyes were locked on his, shining with an emotion he had only seen hints of before. "I saw what you did. With the Tyranitar. You healed it. It was just in pain," he said simply. "I just helped it remember who it was." "No," she insisted, shaking her head. "It was more than that. All my life, I've looked for the strongest trainers. I've looked for walls to break through, for rivals who could push me to my limit. That's all I thought battling was about. Power, strength, victory." She looked from his eyes to the sleeping giant at their feet. "But today, you showed me something else. You have more power than anyone I've ever met, but that's not what makes you strong. It's your heart, your mercy. You were willing to risk everything to save Pokémon that were trying to hurt you." The last of her composure broke. The words came out in a rush, a torrent of emotion she could no longer contain. "I don't just want to battle you, Ash," she said, her voice thick with feeling. Her hands clenched into fists at her side. "I want to stand with you. Against everything. When you ran after that Tyranitar, I wasn't thinking about our next match. I was just terrified of losing you. I want to fight by your side. I want to help you protect people, protect Pokémon. Protect this home." Her confession hung in the warm desert air, raw and absolute. It wasn't the shy admission of a schoolgirl crush. It was a warrior pledging her sword, her life, her heart, to a cause, and a person she finally, truly believed in. Ash was stunned into silence. He saw the fierce loyalty, the profound adoration, the deep, transformative love shining in her eyes. He saw a partner. He reached out and took her hand. Her fingers, calloused from holding Pokeballs, intertwined with his. "Okay, Nemona," he said, his voice soft but sure. "Let's protect it together." Her breath hitched, and a single tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. But her smile was the brightest he had ever seen. From the ridge above, Rika watched them, a slow, knowing smile of her own playing on her lips. She had just witnessed the forging of an unbreakable bond. The champion had just found his sword. And his queen. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Weight of the Crown. The journey back from the Asado Desert was a stark contrast to the frantic race to get there. The sun had long set, leaving the landscape painted in the soft, cool hues of twilight under a canopy of brilliant stars. Rika drove with a steady, relaxed hand, the jeep's headlights cutting a lonely path through the darkness. In the back, Nemona had finally succumbed to her exhaustion, her head resting on Ash's shoulder, her breathing deep and even. Pomot was a fluffy, sleeping ball in her lap. Ash sat quietly, the weight of his own fatigue settling deep into his bones. He gently supported Nemona, his arm a steady presence around her. He looked at her sleeping face. The fierce lines of the warrior softened into a peaceful vulnerability, and a profound sense of warmth and responsibility washed over him. He had her loyalty, her trust, her heart. It was a greater prize than any trophy. Pikachu, curled up on the dashboard, watched him with intelligent, knowing eyes, a silent understanding passing between the lifelong partners. Up front, Rika glanced in the rearview mirror, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. She had seen the way Nemona had barely left Ash's side since his victory over the Tyranitar, the way their hands would brush, the way they moved in a new, shared orbit. She's completely smitten, you know, Rika said, her voice a low murmur that wouldn't disturb the sleepers. Ash didn't feign ignorance. I know. You handle it well, she continued, her eyes back on the road. The battle, the politics, the girl. Most men would crumble under half that weight. You just seem to get stronger. It's not weight, Ash said, his gaze drifting to the stars. It's an anchor. It keeps me steady. Rika was silent for a long moment, the purr of the engine filling the quiet. You're a strange man, Ash Ketchum, she finally said, a note of genuine admiration in her voice. A very strange man. They arrived at the League headquarters in the dead of night. The spire was lit like a beacon against the dark sky, a symbol of order and stability that felt, for the first time, like a lie. They weren't met with a hero's welcome. Instead, two grim-faced League officials in severe black suits were waiting for them at the entrance, their expressions a mixture of disapproval and anxiety. Champion Ash, Miss Rika, Miss Nemona, the first official said, his voice stiff. Top Champion Gita has convened an emergency session of the Paldea League Oversight Committee. They are waiting for you in the Grand Assembly Hall. Nemona, jolted awake by the stop, was instantly alert. A committee meeting. Now, we just stopped a regional disaster. It is because of the regional disaster that they are waiting, the second official said, his tone icy. The Asado incident has caused considerable concern among the League's sponsors and the regional government. Ash's exhaustion vanished, replaced by a cold sense of dread. He had won the battle in the desert, but he was about to walk into a far more dangerous fight. This one wouldn't be fought with Pokemon, but with words, politics, and fear. The Grand Assembly Hall was designed to intimidate. Its ceiling soared hundreds of feet into the air, supported by massive marble columns. Tiered rows of dark wood benches faced a single, elevated dais. It was a place for judgment, not discussion. Seated in the front rows were not just the Elite Four, but a dozen men and women in expensive, tailored suits. They were the faces on the back of the League's brochures, CEOs of the Devon Corporation, Sylph Company, and the Paldea Business Guild. They were the money. The real power. On the dais, Gita sat on a high-backed, throne-like chair. She looked small and isolated, a queen presiding over a court that was no longer hers to command. She looked exhausted, the flawless mask of La Primera showing visible cracks under the strain. As Ash, Nemona, and Rika entered, a hostile silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to them, and the collective stare was heavy with accusation. A portly man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and a severe suit stood up. He was the chairman of the committee, a man whose family had funded the League since its inception. Champion Ash, he began, his voice booming with artificial gravitas. We have been briefed by Top Champion Gita on today's events. An entire herd of terrestrialized Pokemon, driven into a frenzy, stampeding towards a major metropolitan area. A catastrophe that was, by your own admission, triggered by a League-contained entity. This is an unprecedented failure of security and control. We stopped it, Nemona shot back, her voice ringing with defiance. We saved Kaskaroffa. Not a single person was hurt. The chairman gave her a withering look. At great risk. We have reviewed the comm logs. Your leader, Champion Ash, made the reckless decision to employ non-lethal tactics. He actively avoided neutralizing the primary threats, choosing instead to redirect them, a strategy that allowed the stampede to get within a mile of the city's primary aqueduct. A strategy that could have led to untold destruction. He turned his full attention to Ash, his eyes cold and hard. Your idealism, champion, is a liability. Your duty is to the people and property of Paldea, not to the feelings of rampaging Pokemon. Why did you not order your team to use decisive force and eliminate the threat as quickly as possible? The room was silent. This was the heart of the accusation. They saw his compassion as weakness. Ash stepped forward, his expression calm. He didn't look at the chairman. He looked at Gita, then at each member of the committee, meeting their hostile gazes without flinching. Because they were not the threat, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the massive hall. They were the victims. The entity we have contained, Subject Zero, drove them mad with pain. To attack them with lethal force would have been a massacre. We would have been slaughtering hundreds of innocent Pokemon. A necessary sacrifice to ensure the safety of a city. Another board member interjected. No, Ash countered, his voice hardening. It would have been a strategic catastrophe. Imagine the headlines. Paldea League champions slaughter herd of wild Pokemon. Public trust would be shattered. Our authority would be gone overnight. Children would grow up seeing trainers not as partners, but as butchers. My decision wasn't based on idealism. It was based on long-term damage control. We didn't just save a city today. We saved the reputation and the very soul of the Pokemon League. His words struck a chord. The committee members began to murmur amongst themselves, their certainty wavering. He hadn't given them the emotional, idealistic answer they expected. He had given them a cold, hard, political calculation they could understand. Rika stepped forward, her arms crossed. I was there. I saw their eyes. It was agony. The champion's plan was the only one that could have worked without turning that desert into a graveyard. It took more courage and more skill than any all-out assault. Hassel stood up from his seat among the Elite Four. A leader who shows mercy in the face of fear is a leader of true strength. I have never been prouder to serve this league than I was today, under the command of Champion Ash. Larry adjusted his tie. The champion's strategy, while unorthodox, was successful. The primary objective was achieved with minimal collateral damage. From an efficiency standpoint, it was the optimal outcome. One by one, his people were standing for him. The committee's united front was crumbling, their accusations turning to dust in the face of the unwavering loyalty Ash commanded. The chairman, seeing he was losing the room, made one last desperate gambit. He turned to the silent figure on the dais. Top champion Gita, La Primera, you are the ultimate authority here. Do you endorse this reckless sentimentality? Do you believe the champion acted appropriately? It was a trap. If she sided with the committee, she would alienate her own Elite Four and publicly condemn the man who had just saved the day. If she sided with Ash, she would be endorsing a methodology that her entire logical mind screamed was flawed and dangerous. It would be an admission that his way was better than hers. Gita looked down at the committee, then at Ash, who stood watching her, his expression not demanding or expectant, but patient. He was giving her the space to make her own choice. The silence stretched for an agonizing minute. Gita's hands, hidden from view by the dais, were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Her mind was a war zone. The logic, the rules, the years of building a reputation on unshakable composure and flawless strategy, all of it was screaming at her to condemn him. But she had seen the results. She had seen the devotion he inspired. She had seen him succeed where her logic would have failed. The champion's methods, she began, her voice strained, were unconventional. The risks were significant. She took a deep breath, a final, shuddering surrender of her old world view. However, the outcome is undeniable. Kaskaroffa is safe. The Pokemon have been contained without a single casualty. Champion Ash acted in a manner befitting his title. The league stands by his actions. The words felt like ash in her mouth, but they were the truth. A wave of relief washed over the Elite Four. The committee members slumped in their seats, their rebellion quashed. Ash had not just won. He had been vindicated by the one person whose approval mattered most. He gave Gita a small, almost imperceptible nod of gratitude. She met his gaze for a fraction of a second, and in her eyes, he saw not victory, but a profound, shattering defeat. The meeting dissolved soon after, the committee members departing with frustrated muttering. Nemona rushed to Ash's side, her eyes shining with pride, while Rika gave him a solid, appreciative clap on the shoulder. He was their leader, their champion. But Ash's gaze was on Gita, who had slipped away from the dais and disappeared through a private exit. The weight of the crown she had just passed to him, metaphorically and publicly, felt heavier than ever. He excused himself from his friends, a sudden, urgent need pulling him away. He found her in her private office, the one that mirrored his own, high in the spire. The room was dark, the only light coming from the glittering expanse of Mesagos's city lights spread out below the panoramic window. She stood with her back to the door, staring out at the city she was sworn to protect, a city she no longer felt she understood how to lead. Her glimmer floated near the ceiling, its light dim, mirroring its trainer's mood. The ramrod's straight posture was gone. Her shoulders were slumped. The Ice Queen had melted, leaving behind a woman lost in the dark. Gita, he said softly. She didn't turn around. You should not be here. I wanted to say thank you, he said, walking slowly into the room. For backing me up down there. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, she whispered, her voice rough with unshed tears. To do otherwise would have been a lie. A logical fallacy. She finally turned, and in the dim light, he could see the glistening tracks on her cheeks. Her composure was completely gone, replaced by a raw, painful vulnerability that was more shocking than any Pokemon attack. Your methods are illogical, she said, her voice trembling with a frustration that bordered on despair. They are reckless. They invite chaos. And yet, they work. I don't understand it. I watch you, and it's like you are speaking a language I have never heard. You face impossible odds, and you win, not with strategy, but with heart. She gestured helplessly at the window, at the peaceful city below. I have devoted my life to protecting this region. To maintaining order. I have built my entire identity on being La Primera, the unshakable one, the perfect champion with the perfect plan. But this threat, this Subject Zero, it doesn't follow the rules. It is a force of pure, illogical chaos. And I don't know what to do. Her confession was a quiet, shattering thing. It was the sound of a queen admitting, perhaps for the first time in her life, that she was lost. That she was afraid. Ash didn't offer solutions. He didn't say, I told you so. He simply closed the distance between them, his presence a calm, steady anchor in her storm. That's because it's not a problem to be solved, he said, his voice gentle. It's not a battle to be won with tactics. Subject Zero isn't just an enemy. It's a being. And it's in pain. It's screaming, and the Pokemon are echoing that scream. We can't beat it with logic because it's not a logical creature. It's a wounded one. He looked into her tear-filled eyes. You've been trying to fight a ghost. But you can't fight a ghost, Gita. You have to listen to it. You have to understand why it's screaming. Her breath hitched. His words, his simple, profound empathy, cut through years of self-imposed isolation and the crushing pressure of perfection. He wasn't judging her for her failure to understand. He was offering her a new way of seeing. How? She whispered. How can you be so sure? So clear? Because I've met a lot of wounded things in my travels, he said with a small, sad smile. She looked away, ashamed of her own vulnerability. I am La Primera. I cannot be this weak. He reached out, not to touch her, but just to offer a silent presence. You don't have to be the top champion, right now, Gita. You don't have to have all the answers. He paused, and his next words were the key that unlocked the final, most heavily guarded door to her heart. Just be you. I've got your back. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. No one had ever said that to her. They came to her for answers, for strength, for leadership. They saw the title, the position, the power. No one, ever, had simply offered to share the burden. No one had ever seen Gita. A sob she could no longer contain escaped her lips. The rigid control she had maintained for a decade shattered into a million pieces. And in that moment of complete surrender, Ash did not try to fix her. He simply stood there, a quiet, unwavering pillar of strength, letting her finally, safely, fall apart. He was the only person in the world she felt she didn't have to be perfect for. And that, for her, was a feeling more profound and transformative than any victory. It felt like coming home. As she slowly regained her composure, the buzzing of Ash's Pokémon cut through the fragile silence. He glanced at the screen. It was Penny. He accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Ash, I'm sorry to bother you, but I've made a breakthrough, Penny's voice said, sounding tired but excited. It's okay, Penny. We're here. What did you find? Ash said, His gaze still on Gita, who was hastily wiping her eyes, her own attention captured by the call. Your theory was right, Penny said, a sense of awe in her voice. Subject Zero's broadcast, it's not just random noise. It's structured. It's complex. It's a message of pure grief and pain. It's a requiem. And I've been analyzing its energy resonance. It's being drawn to concentrated sources of terrestrial energy across the region. A new map appeared on Ash's Pokonov screen, a schematic of Paldea. Several points began to flash with red warning symbols. It's not just a hunter, Penny said, her voice grim. It's a collector. It's trying to reclaim the energy it perceives as stolen. It's being drawn to the gyms. Ash looked at the flashing lights on the map. Cordondo, Artisan, Levencia, Kaskarafa. One by one, the homes of Paldea's gym leaders were lighting up like targets. The crisis was no longer contained to a lab or a desert. It was about to erupt, all across the region. The ghost was no longer just haunting them. It was going to war. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. An Alliance of Outcasts. The flashing red lights on the Pokonov's map painted Gita's face in a grim, pulsating glow. The room, which moments before had been a sanctuary of fragile truce and emotional breakthrough, was once again a command center for a war they were losing. Nemona and Rika, alerted by the urgent summons, had joined them, their expressions hardening as they looked at the targeted cities lighting up the screen. It's going after the gyms, Rika stated, her voice a low growl. It wants the Terra orbs. It's not just a ghost anymore, it's a predator, and it's going after the biggest stockpiles of food. Gita's mind, battered but not broken, snapped back into its default state of tactical logic. The vulnerability of moments before was sealed away behind a fresh layer of icy composure. We must act. I will put every gym in the region on lockdown. I will dispatch League security divisions to fortify their locations. We will harden the targets. And then what? Ash countered, his tone not argumentative, but analytical. We'll have our security forces spread thin across the entire region, defending 8 different locations. We'll be in a purely defensive posture. We'll be waiting for it to strike, and we won't know where or when. We'll be ceding the initiative completely. It is the only logical response, Gita insisted, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. We must protect our assets. Our greatest asset isn't the gyms. It's information, Ash said, turning to the Pokonov. Penny, is there any way to track this thing? To predict where it will manifest next? Penny's voice came over the speaker, hesitant but thoughtful. Its energy signature is too faint to track when it's traveling through the grid. It's like trying to find one specific electron in a lightning storm. By the time its energy coalesces enough for me to get a lock, it's already at its target. We'd need a network of independent, high-energy sensors scattered all over Paldea, something that could detect its subtle influence on the local energy fields before it fully manifests. A regional early warning system, Rika mused. We don't have anything like that. It would take months, maybe years, to build. We don't have to build it, Ash said, a sudden, radical idea dawning in his eyes. He looked at Penny. Penny, there's another network in Paldea, isn't there? A decentralized system of fortified, high-energy locations, completely independent of the League's grid. Penny was silent for a moment as she understood his meaning. Her breath hitched. You can't be serious. He is, isn't he? Nemona said, a slow, audacious grin spreading across her face as she, too, made the connection. Gita looked between them, her expression a mask of confusion. What are you talking about? What network? Penny brought up a new layer on the holographic map. 5 new locations lit up, not with the clean, uniform blue of League facilities, but with a chaotic, vibrant purple. They were located in the remote, forgotten corners of the provinces, far from the civilized centers. The 5 bases of Team Star. They're Star Mobiles, Penny explained, her voice a mixture of trepidation and pride. Their engines were extensively modified. They run on a self-contained, high-output energy core that constantly draws in ambient electrical and terrestrial energy to power their systems. They're basically 5 massive, mobile energy detectors. They're perfect, Ash said decisively. A ready-made sensor net. If we can get them to synchronize their energy readings and feed the data to you, Penny, you could triangulate Subject Zero's position the moment it starts to coalesce. The silence in the room was deafening. Gita stared at the map as if Ash had just proposed an alliance with a Giratina. Absolutely not, she said, her voice trembling with cold fury. Team Star are delinquents. Truants. They instigated Operation Starfall, a region-wide campaign of harassment against the Academy. They are a symbol of rebellion and disorder. To involve them, to legitimize them, it is politically unthinkable. It is illogical. Is it more illogical than letting our gyms get taken down one by one because we were too proud to ask for help? Ash shot back, his patience finally wearing thin. I don't care about their school records, Gita. I care about their resources. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about survival. He looked at the others, his gaze firm, asserting his command. This is my decision. We're bringing them in. He then turned his attention back to the Pokonov. Penny, you were their leader. Their big boss. They'll listen to you. We'll go together. We'll go now. Gita looked like she had been physically struck. He wasn't asking for her permission. He wasn't opening a debate. He was giving an order that defied every rule and tradition she held sacred. He was the champion, and he was taking command of the war. Me. Penny's voice was a squeak of pure terror. Go there. In person. Ash. They think I abandoned them. They hate me. Giacomo. Mela, they'll never forgive me. They won't have to forgive you, Ash said, his voice softening, filled with an unshakable confidence in her. They just have to listen to you. And they will. Because you're the only one who can make them understand what's at stake. I'll be right there with you. His faith was a tangible thing, a shield against her fear. She was silent for a long moment. Finally, a quiet, determined response came through the speaker. Quote. Shadar Squad's base. It's the closest. I'll send you the coordinates. I'm coming too, Nemona declared, stepping forward. If they give you any trouble, they'll have to go through me. Ash shook his head. No, I need you and Rika here. You're my rapid response team. When Penny and I get that network online, you two need to be ready to move the second she gives us a target. This only works if we all trust each other to do our part. Nemona looked like she wanted to argue, but she saw the strategic wisdom in his decision. She saw the trust he was placing in her. She gave a sharp, decisive nod. All right, we'll be ready. Ash turned to leave, pausing at the door to look back at the stunned top champion. We can win this, Gita, he said. But we have to be willing to break the rules to do it. He and Penny left a trail of shattered protocols in their wake, leaving Gita alone with Nemona and Rika in the war room, staring at a map that now held the fate of Paldea in the hands of a group of teenage misfits. The Shadar Squad's base was a chaotic mess of scrap metal, neon lights, and defiant energy, nestled in the rocky badlands of Area 3. A massive, modified revive room, the Shadar Starmobile, sat like a slumbering beast in the center of the camp, its dark purple plating covered in aggressive, fiery decals. As Ash's Corbinite landed at the camp's edge, they were immediately surrounded. A dozen trainers in the stylized, rebellious Team Star uniforms emerged from behind barricades, their expressions a mixture of shock and hostility. At their head was a tall young man with turntables strapped to his back and a look of pure disdain on his face. Giacomo, the Shadar Squad boss. Well, he sneered, his eyes locking on Ash. Look what we have here. The league's golden boy, the champion himself. You lost, pretty boy. This ain't Victory Road. His sneer faltered as he saw who was standing beside Ash. His eyes widened, and the disdain was replaced by a look of deep, bitter hurt. Penny. The name was a quiet accusation. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here. Penny shrank behind Ash, her carefully constructed courage crumbling under the weight of his glare. We're not here for a fight, Giacomo, Ash said, his voice calm and even. We're here to talk. A girl with fiery red and yellow hair and heavy, black boots pushed her way to the front. Mela, the fire-type specialist, looked Penny up and down with pure contempt. Talk. You've had a year and a half to talk, Penny. You chose to be a ghost. Now you show up with him. She spat the word out like it was poison. The one who beat all of us. Humiliated us. You're a traitor. That's enough, Mela, a new voice commanded. From the shadow of the Starmobile, Eri, the formidable fighting-type user and arguably the most respected of the Star bosses, emerged. With her were the other two leaders. The small, sharp-tongued Ortega and the flamboyant, ninja-like Atticus. The whole gang was here. Aries' gaze was hard, but it held none of the outright hostility of the others. It was assessing, questioning. She looked at Penny, then at Ash. The champion is right. We're not fighting. Not until we hear what they have to say. Why are you here, Ketchum? This was the moment. Ash knew he couldn't command them. He couldn't intimidate them. He had to meet them on their own terms. He didn't speak as a champion. He spoke as a fellow trainer. Because Paldea is in danger, he said simply. A threat is coming. Something that isn't a Pokemon, something we can't just beat in a battle. It's an entity of pure energy, and it's about to launch a region-wide attack. The League, we're not equipped to stop it. Not alone. Ortega scoffed. Oh, boo-hoo. The big, powerful Pokemon League needs help. Why should we care? The League never cared about us when we were being bullied, when we were forced to create Team Star just to have a place to belong. He's right, Atticus added, striking a dramatic pose. For what reason should we, the shadows of the Academy, lend our noble strength to the very institution that cast us out? The distrust was a wall, thick and impenetrable. Ash knew he couldn't break through it. But Penny could. He took a small step back, turning slightly to look at her. He didn't say a word. He just gave her a small, encouraging nod. Your turn. I'm here. I trust you. Penny saw the look. She saw his unwavering faith. She saw him ceding the spotlight, empowering her to be the leader she once was. A deep breath shuddered through her. She pushed her glasses up her nose and stepped out from behind his shadow. She looked at her former friends, at their hurt and angry faces, and she didn't see delinquents. She saw her family. And her voice, when it came, was not the shy, stammering whisper of the tech girl. It was the clear, commanding voice of the big boss. I know you hate me, she began, her voice ringing with a newfound strength that made them all take a step back in surprise. I know I disappeared. I know I hurt you. And I am sorry for that. I was a coward. I was afraid. She met Giacomo's eyes, then Mella's. But I am not here today as a coward. And I am not asking you to help the League. The League doesn't deserve your help. I'm asking you to help me. She gestured to Ash. He is not the League's golden boy. He's the only person in that entire ivory tower who has seen the real threat. The only one who is willing to do what it takes to stop it. Everyone else is trying to protect the rules. He is trying to protect the people. She took a step forward, her presence suddenly immense. This thing that's coming, it caused the blackout in Artisan. It caused the stampede in the Asado Desert. It's a ghost born from pain, and it wants to turn all of Paldea into a wasteland. I have it trapped in a cage of my own design, but I can't hold it forever. We need to find it. We need to stop it. And I can't do it alone. She looked at the Shadar Starmobile, at the symbol of their rebellion and their strength. Our Starmobiles are the key. They are the only things that can act as an early warning system. This isn't a mission from the League. This is a mission for Team Star. Our final mission. Help me save our home. The Star bosses were stunned into silence. She hadn't apologized for the League. She had owned her own mistakes and had appealed not to their sense of duty, but to their loyalty. To her. Ash stepped forward, sealing the deal. She's right. This isn't a request from the Pokemon League. It's a proposal for an alliance. He looked at Eri, at Giacomo, at all of them. You do this, you help us save Paldea, and Operation Starfall is wiped from the records. I will grant every member of Team Star a full, unconditional pardon, under my authority as top champion. He paused, letting the weight of that offer sink in before delivering the final, brilliant stroke. And it's not just a pardon. It's a promotion. Team Star will be reformed into a new, official organization, the Paldene Defense Network. An independent branch of regional security, tasked with monitoring and responding to unorthodox threats. And it will be under the direct command of Penny. He wasn't just forgiving them. He was giving them everything they had ever wanted. Recognition, respect, and a purpose. A place to belong, not in the shadows, but in the light. Eri was the first to break. A slow, wide grin spread across her face. She looked at Penny, not with anger, but with a deep, abiding respect. The big boss is back, she said, her voice filled with admiration. She turned to the others. I don't know about you all, but I'm in. One by one, the others caved. Ortega, Atticus, Mela, and finally, Giacomo. The anger in his eyes was replaced by a grudging, hopeful respect. You always did know how to plan a crazy operation, boss, he said with a small smile. The alliance was forged. Later that evening, Ash and Penny stood on a ridge overlooking the Shadar base. Below them, the camp was a hive of activity as the Star members worked with a renewed sense of purpose, linking their Starmobiles to Penny's network. The final link in the chain was about to be activated. Penny was quiet, her hands clasped behind her back. The adrenaline of the negotiation had faded, leaving a quiet, profound sense of peace. Thank you, Ash, she said softly, not looking at him. For trusting me. I haven't felt like that, like myself, in a very long time. You were amazing, Penny, he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. You were a leader. She finally turned to look at him, her face illuminated by the rising moon. Her expression was vulnerable, her eyes shining with an emotion that made his heart beat a little faster. My whole life, I've hidden, she whispered, the words a fragile, precious confession. Behind screens, behind code, behind my big, fluffy Eevee backpack. It felt safer there. The world is loud, and scary, and people can be cruel. She took a small, hesitant step closer to him. But when I'm with you, I don't want to hide. You make me feel brave. You see me, the real me, and you're not scared, and you don't think I'm weird. You just trust me. You make me feel strong. Her voice dropped to a whisper, filled with a shy, breathtaking sincerity that was so different from Nemona's fiery declaration, but just as powerful. I think I'm in love with you, Ash. The words hung in the cool night air. Ash looked into her hopeful, terrified eyes and saw the incredible strength she hid from the world. He saw the brilliant mind, the loyal heart, and the brave soul who had just stepped back into the light because of him. He reached out and gently took her hand. Her fingers were cold, but they trembled and held on to his tightly. Penny, he said, his voice soft. I. Before he could finish, his Pokénov chimed. On its screen, the map of Paldea lit up. 5 brilliant purple points of light, the star bases, flared to life, connected by a shimmering, golden web. The Paldene Defense Network was online. And almost immediately, a single, angry red dot appeared on the map, flickering into existence on the coast, near the city of Levencia. Penny's head snapped towards the screen, her personal confession forgotten in the face of the immediate crisis. I've got it, she said, her voice once again the confident, steady command of the network's leader. It's Subject Zero. It's manifesting. The target is Levencia Gym. The quiet moment was over. The war had begun. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. Descent into the Breach. The command center, formerly Gita's pristine office, was now a maelstrom of controlled chaos. Penny's face, projected onto a massive holographic screen, was a grim mask of concentration. The map of Paldea was her chessboard, and on it, a single red piece was making a beeline for the coast. It's moving faster than before, Penny reported, her voice sharp and clear, stripped of all its earlier hesitation. She was no longer a shy tech girl, she was the commander of the Paldene Defense Network, and her authority was absolute. It's not just manifesting at the target. It's traveling there with purpose. Estimated arrival in Levencia. 12 minutes. That's not enough time to evacuate the city, Rika said, her hand resting on a pokeball, her knuckles white. We won't have to, Ash said. He stood before the map, flanked by Nemona and Rika. His rapid response team. Behind him, Gita stood by Penny's holographic projection, her arms crossed. The former top champion had seamlessly transitioned into a new role, mission control. She was coordinating League resources, rerouting power, and clearing flight paths with a chilling efficiency that Ash was profoundly grateful for. The alliance was working. Ayano won't be at the gym at this time of night, Ash continued, his mind already on the battlefield. But her security systems are the most advanced in the region. All that tech, all that electricity, it's the perfect feeding ground. We can't let it dig in. My Corviknight is the fastest transport we have, Gita stated, already tapping commands into her datapad. I have cleared a direct flight path from Mesagoza to Levencia. You have a 9-minute travel time. It will be close. Close is good enough, Nemona said, her eyes burning with a fierce, protective light. This wasn't about the thrill of a fight anymore. This was about protecting their home. Let's go, Ash said simply. The flight to Levencia was a tense, silent ribbon of darkness. The wind whipped past them as Corbinite soared through the night sky, its powerful wings eating up the miles. Below, the lights of towns and cities blurred into abstract patterns. Ash, Nemona, and Rika stood on the transport platform attached to the great bird's back, the wind tearing at their hair. There was no banter, no bravado. They were a special forces unit heading into a combat zone, and the weight of their responsibility was a palpable thing. As they approached the coast, the dazzling, neon-drenched cityscape of Levencia came into view. It was a jewel of light against the black velvet of the sea. In the heart of the city, one building pulsed with an unnatural, sickly purple energy that flickered and stropped like a corrupted rave. There it is, Rika growled. Levencia Gym. Ash, can you hear me? Penny's voice crackled in their earpieces. It's inside. It's integrated itself with Iono's broadcast network. It's not just draining power anymore, it's taking control. Corviknight descended, landing hard on the gym's rooftop battle stage. The moment their feet touched the ground, the entire building shuddered. The massive video screens that normally showed Iono's cheerful face contorted into swirling vortexes of purple static. The speakers, instead of blasting pop music, emitted a low, gut-wrenching hum that vibrated in their chests. Welcome to the party, Nemona muttered, her pomade leaping from her shoulder, its cheeks already sparking. They kicked open the door to the gym's interior and were met with chaos. It wasn't a single entity this time. The ghost was everywhere. Electrical cables snaked down from the ceiling like angry serpents, lashing out and discharging bolts of corrupted energy. Stage lights swiveled on their own, firing focused beams of blinding, disorienting light. The small, camera-equipped Rotom drones that Iono used to film her streams now zipped through the air like angry hornets, their lenses glowing a malevolent purple. It's learned to possess technology. Rika shouted over the din, recalling her Clodsire and sending out her Glimmora, whose gem-like body was better suited to the enclosed space. It's a techno-poltergeist. Nemona yelled, a wild grin of disbelief on her face. Lycanroc, use Stone Edge on those cables. Rika, your Glimmora, use Power Gem on the lights. Take out their power source. Ash commanded, his mind processing the chaotic battlefield in seconds. Pikachu, Sceptile, you're with me. We're heading for the central broadcast room. That's the heart of the system. The team split, executing the plan with flawless, practiced synergy. Nemona's Lycanroc leapt up the walls, its claws finding purchase on the metal framework as it unleashed a volley of glowing rocks that severed the sparking cables. Rika's Glimmora spun like a top, firing brilliant projectiles that shattered the stage lights one by one, plunging sections of the gym into darkness. Ash led the charge toward the control room, Pikachu a golden blur at his side, Sceptile a green phantom just behind. A squadron of Rotom drones swarmed them, firing tiny bolts of electricity. Sceptile, use Leaf Storm. Create a shield, Ash ordered. Sceptile spun, generating a whirlwind of razor-sharp leaves that formed a protective vortex around them, the electric bolts dissipating harmlessly against the green barrier. Pikachu, now, Thunderbolt, full power, at the whole group. From within the leafy cyclone, Pikachu unleashed a massive, branching bolt of pure golden lightning. It struck the drones with overwhelming force, causing them to short-circuit and fall from the air in a shower of sparks. They kicked down the door to the broadcast room and found the source. In the center of the room, a massive holographic projector was swirling with a concentrated storm of purple energy. It was Subject Zero's core consciousness, embedded in the machine. It was using the projector to command the rest of the gym. We found the nest. Ash yelled into his comm. Nemona, Rika, fall back to our position. We're ending this here. The entity sensed the threat. The holographic storm flared, and the server racks lining the walls began to tremble violently. With a screech of tearing metal, the racks ripped themselves from their moorings and floated into the air, animated by the poltergeist's power. They hurtled toward Ash and his team like enraged golems. Sceptile, Leaf Blade, Pikachu, Iron Tail, dismantle them. Sceptile's blades and Pikachu's tail became a blur of green and silver, chopping and smashing at the flying servers, reducing them to scrap metal before they could land. Just as Nemona and Rika slid into the room, their own Pokemon clearing a path behind them, the entity made its final, desperate move. The holographic projector overloaded. The purple energy storm erupted outwards, not as an attack, but as a retreat. It shot up through the building's primary data conduit, blowing out the ceiling panel in a shower of sparks, and vanished into the city's network. The gym fell silent. The remaining lights flickered and returned to their normal, cheerful colors. The oppressive hum was gone. They had won. It's retreating. Penny's voice exclaimed in their earpieces. I'm tracking its energy signature. You did it. You drove it out. Where is it going? Ash asked, breathing heavily. There was a pause. That's strange, Penny said. It's not scattering. It's moving in a straight line. It's following a path of high terrestrial energy concentration, a ley line. A direct route leading southwest from Levencia. A cold realization washed over Ash. He pulled up the map on his Pokénov. The glowing line of the entity's retreat was cutting across the provinces, pointing like a dagger at one single location. The darkest, most feared place in all of Paldea. It's going home, Ash whispered. It's falling back to the Great Crater. The mood in the command center back in Mesagoza was grim. The holographic map now showed the undeniable truth. The gyms weren't random targets. They were stepping stones, energy sources on a path leading back to Area Zero. Defending the gyms is a losing strategy, Rika said, pacing the floor. We're just playing whack-a-mole while the real problem festers. It's learning, Nemona added, her arms crossed tight. The attack on the lab, the stampede, now this, it's getting stronger, smarter. It's adapting. The next time it emerges, it will be even more powerful. Gita stood before the map, her expression one of cold, hard clarity. Her emotional crisis was over, replaced by the chilling logic of a general facing an unwinnable war. We are in a reactive loop. We can only respond to its attacks. We cannot predict. We cannot preempt. By the time we act, we have already lost the initiative. All eyes turned to Ash. He was staring at the center of the map, at the gaping maw of the Great Crater. His expression was distant, his mind 1,000 miles away, deep in the earth. He saw the only path forward. It was reckless, it was unsanctioned, and it was probably suicide. But it was the only move left on the board. We're done defending, he said, his voice quiet but absolute. We're going in. We're going to the source. We're going to Area Zero. The statement dropped into the room with the force of a physical blow. Going into the Great Crater was forbidden, a cardinal rule of the League. It was uncharted, filled with monstrously powerful Pokémon that defied classification, and steeped in a palpable aura of dread. Ash, that's insane, Rika said, her bravado finally cracking. No one has been to the bottom and come back in years. It's a death trap. It's also the only way, Ash countered, turning to face them. His eyes held no fear, only a cold, hard certainty. We can't win by guarding the branches. We have to cut the root. Everything that's happening is coming from down there. The answers, and the solution, are at the bottom of that crater. He looked at Gita. He wasn't asking for permission. He was informing her of his plan. I'm taking a team down. We're going to find the source of Subject Zero, and we are going to end this. Gita stared at him, her mind racing. Every rule, every protocol, every logical fiber of her being screamed that this was madness. It was an unacceptable risk. But then she looked at the map, at the path of destruction the entity had already carved. She replayed the last 48 hours in her mind. His clarity in the face of the unknown, his compassion that was a strategic strength, his ability to inspire loyalty in outcasts and rivals alike. His illogical methods had been the only thing that had worked. She took a deep breath, making the most important decision of her career. You are right, she said, the words tasting strange and revolutionary. A defensive strategy is a guaranteed loss. A surgical strike on the enemy's command center is our only logical path to victory. She turned to her console, her fingers flying. I will use my authority as top champion to temporarily seal the Great Crater under a level 10 quarantine. No one gets in or out. It will buy you time and cover. I will provide you with a lead VTOL transport for rapid insertion to the Zero Gate. She then looked up, and for the first time, a flicker of the old La Primera fire returned to her eyes, but it was different now. It was tempered, focused. And I am coming with you. I will not sit here and watch a map while my champions fight for the fate of my region. This is my responsibility, too. Nemona and Rika exchanged a look of stunned disbelief. Gita, the queen in the ivory tower, was volunteering for a frontline suicide mission. Ash's influence was not just changing strategies, it was changing people to their very core. All right, Ash said with a firm nod, accepting her as part of the team. The four of us. We go in, we find the source, we cut it off. Penny, you are our only link to the outside world. Keep this channel open at all costs. I will, Ash, she promised, her voice filled with a mixture of terror and awe. Be safe. The descent was like plunging into another world. The League VTOL dropped them at the Zero Gate research station, and from there, they began their journey on foot into the crater's depths. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of strange flora and ozone. The sky above became a shrinking circle of blue, replaced by the glowing, crystalline ceiling of the cavern. The deeper they went, the more the corruption became visible. The massive crystals that studded the walls pulsed with a faint, sickly purple light. The very air seemed to hum with Subject Zero's pain. They were not alone. The Paradox Pokemon that swarmed them were horrifyingly different from the ones in the legends. A great tusk, its powerful hide partially covered in jagged purple crystals, charged them with eyes glowing with mindless rage. A roaring scream tail, its cry distorted and painful, lunged from the shadows. They were puppets, their bodies and minds hijacked by the entity's will. But the team was a well-oiled machine. Gita, its flank. Nemona, with me, Ash commanded. Kingambit, kowtow cleave. Gita's voice was sharp, precise. Her ace Pokemon moved with lethal grace, its massive blade striking the corrupted Great Tusk's leg, forcing it to stumble. Lycanroc, Accelerock, let's go. Pomot, Nemona yelled, a whirlwind of joyful battle lust. Her two Pokemon struck in a blur of motion, a perfectly coordinated pincer attack. Rika, the ground. Don't let them surround us. Ash ordered. On it, boss. Dugtrio, Earthquake. Rika slammed her fist on the ground, and her Pokemon followed suit, the entire cavern floor shaking violently, sending the smaller, corrupted Pokemon tumbling. Ash was the core, the center of their formation. His Pikachu was a golden comet, weaving through the chaos, its thunderbolts precise and devastating. They moved as one, a four-person engine of destruction, their Pokemon a seamless extension of their will. Gita's cold tactics, Rika's raw power, Nemona's relentless offense, all of it was unified by Ash's intuitive, fluid command. They were not just fighting. They were dominant. They fought their way through swarms of corrupted Iron Hands and Iron Jagulus, deeper and deeper, until they reached the final, shimmering cave. At its center was the Zero Lab, a crystalline structure that pulsed with a terrible, beautiful light. And inside, at its heart, was the source. The time machine. It was no longer the sleek, futuristic device from the professor's journals. It was a monstrous, twisted thing, wreathed in the same pulsating purple energy as Subject Zero. The crystals around it were black and jagged, and the air crackled with raw, untamed temporal energy. It was a wound in the fabric of reality. As they stepped into the lab, their comms crackled to life. But it wasn't Penny's voice. It was a chorus of 1,000 whispers, a symphony of pain that echoed directly inside their minds. Less than, thieves, greater than. Less than, you bleed me, you wound me, greater than. Penny's voice cut through the psychic static, horrified. Ash, it's hijacked the comms. It's using me as a relay. I can't shut it off. The psychic voice grew stronger, coalescing around Penny's channel, using her as its unwilling mouthpiece. Less than I am the crystal heart. I am the sleeping soul. I am the past and future of this land. And this wound, it is killing me. Greater than. The time machine pulsed violently. Less than YOUWHO wear my blood as a crown. UWHO steal my power for your games, I offer you a choice. Greater than. The voice filled their minds, cold, ancient, and utterly absolute. Less than destroy the machine. Cauterize the wound. Let me heal. Let me sleep. Greater than. And if we do? Ash asked, his voice steady, speaking to the air, to the machine, to the ghost. Less than The bleeding will stop. My power will recede, become whole within me once more. This land's connection to the terrestrial phenomenon will be severed. But I will be at peace. You will be safe. Greater than. Severed. The word hung in the air, a death sentence for Paldea's entire culture. And if we refuse? Gita asked, her face a mask of horror. The psychic scream that answered was one of pure, undiluted agony and rage. Less than then I will take back what is mine. I will reclaim every stolen shard, every crystal, every drop of my blood. I will unmake your cities and your champions. I will reduce this entire land to the primordial crystal it once was. I will purge the infection. That is you. Greater than. They stood frozen, trapped between two impossible choices. They could destroy the time machine, sacrificing the very power that defined their region, plunging Paldea into a new dark age. Or they could refuse, and condemn everyone and everything they had ever known to a slow, crystalline death. The ghost had finally shown its face. It was not a monster. It was a god. And it had just passed judgment. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Champion's Gambit. The psychic ultimatum of Subject Zero echoed in the crystalline silence of the Zero Lab, a poison that seeped into the minds of the four champions. Two choices, each a different shade of apocalypse. Destroy the machine and kill Paldea's soul, or refuse and watch it be unmade entirely. The weight of an entire region's fate had settled upon their shoulders. Nemona and Rika were frozen, their battle-honed instincts useless against a choice with no right answer. They looked to Ash, their faces pale, seeking the anchor in the storm. But it was Gita who moved first. Her shock and horror receded, replaced by a chilling, absolute clarity. The crisis had been distilled into a problem with two variables, and her mind, a finely tuned instrument of logic, saw only one viable solution. We destroy the machine, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. It was not a suggestion, it was a final calculation. The loss of the terrestrial phenomenon is a catastrophic, but survivable, outcome. Annihilation is not. The choice is a logical absolute. She turned to a dusty, forgotten terminal in the corner of the lab, her fingers already flying across its keyboard, searching for a system she had only read about in the League's most classified archives. What are you doing? Rika demanded, her voice tight. Accessing the 0-point protocol, Gita replied without looking up. A failsafe, designed by the League's founders in the event that the crater's energy ever became an uncontrollable threat. It will channel a targeted energy surge from the regional power grid directly into the time machine's core, causing a controlled implosion. It will cauterize the wound, just as the entity requested. You can't be serious. Nemona cried out, horrified. Gita, you're just going to do what it says. You're going to kill terrestrialization. I am going to save Paldea, Gita corrected, her voice as cold and hard as the crystals around them. Sentimentality has no place in this equation. This is the only way. No. The word was quiet, but it cut through the room with the force of a physical blow. All three women turned to stare at Ash. He hadn't moved. He was still looking at the wounded, pulsing time machine, but his expression was no longer one of contemplation. It was one of absolute, unshakable resolve. No, he repeated, turning to face Gita. We're not killing it. And we're not killing our home. Gita stopped typing, her back rigid. Do not be a fool, Ash. This is not one of your battles where empathy can win the day. This is a hostage negotiation, and the life of the entire region is on the line. There is no third option. There's always a third option, Ash insisted, taking a step towards her. That thing isn't a monster. It's a living being in constant, unimaginable pain. The time machine is a spear in its side, and it's bleeding across reality. It's not asking us to kill the machine because it's evil. It's asking because it's desperate. It thinks destruction is the only way to stop the pain. A poignant analysis, Gita sneered, her patience shattering. But it is irrelevant. Its pain is about to destroy us all. So we don't destroy the machine, Ash concluded, his voice ringing with a conviction that defied all logic. We heal the wound. We show it another way. We give it our own energy, our own harmony, not to destroy, but to stabilize. We help it. Gita spun around, her face a mask of furious disbelief. You would risk the annihilation of millions based on a sentimental, childish fantasy. On the hope that you can heal a godlike consciousness with the power of friendship. I have tolerated your reckless, emotional methods until now, champion, but this is the line. You are allowing your feelings to cloud your judgment at the most critical moment in Paldea's history. She drew herself up to her full height, the icy mantle of La Primera descending upon her once more. As the top champion of the Paldea Pokemon League, I am invoking my supreme authority. I order you to stand down. The 0-point protocol will be activated. That is my final decision. Ash didn't flinch. He simply met her furious gaze with a look of profound, sorrowful disappointment. You can be the top champion, Gita. Or you can be a leader. You can't be both right now. The defiance was absolute. It was a declaration of mutiny. Gita's face contorted with a rage born of desperation and the terror of losing control. So be it, she whispered, her voice trembling. You have forgotten your place. I will remind you. She ripped a Pokeball from her belt. Kingambit, to me. Her ace Pokemon materialized in a flash of dark light, its massive blade-like helmet gleaming. It took its position in front of Gita, a formidable, unmovable wall of steel and dark intent. The battle line had been drawn. Ash sighed, a deep, weary sound. Pikachu, I'm sorry to ask. Pika Pie, his partner responded, leaping from his shoulder. There was no joy in his posture, no thrill of the fight. Only a grim, necessary duty. Don't do this, you two. Rika pleaded, caught in the crossfire. But it was too late. Kingambit, use Kowtow Cleave. Gita commanded, her voice sharp as glass. The dark steel Pokemon shot forward, its body low to the ground, its head blade glowing with a sinister energy. It was an attack that was both unavoidable and devastatingly powerful. Pikachu, quick attack, Ash said, his voice barely a whisper. Pikachu became a streak of pure, golden light. He didn't meet the attack head on. He didn't dodge. He moved with a speed that seemed to bend the space around him, flowing around the Kowtow Cleave like water around a stone. Before Kingambit could even register the miss, Pikachu was on its flank. Iron Tail. His tail hardened into gleaming steel. The blow was not a wild smash, but a single, precise, impossibly fast strike to the joint between Kingambit's leg and torso. The larger Pokemon roared in pain, its advance faltering. Insolent. Gita snarled. Supreme Overlord will not be denied. Iron Head. Kingambit, empowered by the fall of its unseen allies, ignored the pain and charged again, its head becoming a metallic battering ram. Thunderbolt. Pikachu didn't move to evade. He stood his ground, a tiny beacon of defiance, and unleashed a torrent of raw, overwhelming power. It was not a simple bolt of lightning. It was a storm, a focused hurricane of electrical energy that engulfed the charging Kingambit completely. The sound was deafening, a continuous, world-shattering roar of thunder. Kingambit was stopped dead in its tracks, trapped within the golden maelstrom, its metallic body convulsing. The sheer, unrestrained power of Ash's Pikachu was on full display. It was the power of a Pokemon who had stood against gods and legends, a power that no league champion could ever hope to match. When the light faded, Kingambit stood for a moment, smoking and scorched, before crashing to the cavern floor, defeated. The lab was silent, save for the hum of the wounded time machine. The battle had lasted less than 10 seconds. It wasn't a contest. It was a statement. The gulf in their power was not a gap, it was an ocean. Gita stared at her fallen partner, then at Ash, her expression completely broken. Her authority, her power, her entire identity, all of it had been shattered by a single thunderbolt. Before she could even process her defeat, Nemona moved. With a fierce cry, she drew her own Pokeball and stepped between Ash and Gita, her Lycanroc materializing at her side in a defensive posture. I stand with him, Nemona declared, her voice ringing with the absolute loyalty of a warrior who had found her king. His path is the one of courage. I will not let you stop him. At the same time, Penny's voice, shaking but resolute, flooded their comms. It wasn't hijacked by the entity anymore. It was all her. Ash, I can do it. She said, her words coming in a rush. Your idea, the harmony, when you fought the Tyranitar, your Terra wave had a unique frequency. It was stable, calming. I've been analyzing Subject Zero's psychic broadcast, and I've found a resonance point. If I can create a counter frequency based on your harmony and broadcast it directly into the entity's consciousness, I might be able to soothe it. To show it that we aren't a threat. Gita looked at the scene before her. Her defeated ace, the unwavering loyalty of Nemona, the impossible hope of Penny's plan. Her logical world had crumbled into ash. In her desperation, she turned back to the failsafe terminal. She could still do it. You cannot stop me, she whispered, her fingers flying across the keys. The protocol is already primed. She slammed a final key. A high priority, alpha level request screamed from the Zero Lab to the Surface Command Center. A demand for a massive, immediate surge of power from the entire Paldean grid, to be channeled directly to her location to power the implosion. On the surface, in the Mesagoza Command Center, Rika slammed her fist on the console. She's lost her mind. They're fighting down there. She, Hassel, Larry, and a wide-eyed Poppy were watching the chaos unfold through the flickering data feeds from Penny's system. They had heard the ultimatum, seen the confrontation, and now they saw the alpha priority request flashing on their main screen. Top Champion Gita's order is absolute, Larry stated, though his voice was laced with an uncharacteristic uncertainty. Logically, we are bound to comply. Logic. Rika spun on him, her eyes blazing. Did you not just see what happened? Ash's way works. Gita's way is a funeral. Are we really going to help her pull the plug on Paldea? The alternative is a gamble of the highest order, Hassel argued, his face a mask of turmoil. To defy La Primera, it is unthinkable. Just then, a second request lit up the console, this one from Penny. It was a frantic, desperate plea, overriding Gita's official order with a backdoor command string only she could have written. Less than calm link. Penny greater than Rika. Hassel. Don't listen to her. I need that power. My broadcast system requires a massive energy source to penetrate the interference from Area Zero. Gita's plan will kill the entity. Ash's plan can save us all. You have to choose. Please. Trust him. Trust me. The room fell silent. Two requests. One from their established leader, an order to carry out a brutal but certain execution. The other from a reclusive hacker and their new, unorthodox champion, a plea to fund a miracle. They were the ones with their hands on the switch. The fate of the world would be decided not in the crater below, but right here, in this room. Rika looked at the flashing prompts. Gita's path was one of fear and control. Ash's path was one of hope and trust. She thought of his calm command in the face of chaos, his faith in Penny, the way he had inspired Nemona to a loyalty that transcended rivalry. He wasn't just a champion. He was a gravitational force, pulling them all into a better, braver orbit. Larry, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. What's the most efficient outcome here? Larry adjusted his glasses, staring at the screen. The destruction of the terrestrial phenomenon would cause a decade-long economic depression and shatter regional stability. The potential for catastrophic inefficiency is staggering. Rika then turned to Hassel. Hassel, what does your heart tell you? The old Dragon Master looked at the screen, at the two choices, and he saw not a tactical decision, but a work of art. Gita's plan was a stark, brutalist sculpture. Ash's was a symphony, complex and uncertain, but with the potential for breathtaking beauty. A heart that does not leap at the chance for a miracle, he said softly, as a heart that has already turned to stone. That was all Rika needed to hear. Sorry, Primera, she whispered, a grim, triumphant smile spreading across her face. Looks like there's been a change in management. Her fingers flew across the console. She bypassed Gita's alpha priority request. She locked it out of the system. Then, with a single, decisive keystroke, she took the entire surplus energy of the Paldea regional power grid and redirected it. Not to the zero-point protocol's failsafe in the lab below, but to a small, unassuming server terminal in a sub-level basement, where a girl with a fluffy Eevee backpack was about to sing a song of peace to a wounded god. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Siege of Mesagoza. In the echoing silence of the Zero Lab, the world shifted. Gita stared at the terminal, at the blunt, undeniable message scrolling across the screen. Alpha priority request overridden. Power grid rerouted. User. E4RIKA. Defiance. Mutiny. Her own Elite Four, the carefully selected pillars of her logical world, had chosen him over her. The realization was a colder, sharper blow than the defeat of her kingdombit. It was the complete and utter collapse of her reign. At that exact moment, the psychic hum of the wounded time machine changed. The low thrum of pain intensified into a piercing, psychic shriek of pure, unadulterated rage. The failsafe protocol, even aborted, had been an act of aggression. The entity had felt the proverbial knife pressing against its heart, and its desperation had finally curdled into wrath. Less than you tried to kill me. Greater than. The voice in their heads was no longer a chorus of whispers. It was a singular, focused roar. Penny's calming counter-frequency, now surging with the power of the entire Paldea grid, began to broadcast from the surface. To the entity, it was another assault, an incomprehensible flood of energy while it was under attack. The purple light of the time machine flared, then abruptly went dark. The oppressive presence in the lab vanished, not with a sense of peace, but with the terrifying emptiness of a predator that had just left its lair to begin the hunt. Ash, it's gone. Penny's voice screamed over their comms, laced with pure terror. It's consciousness, it's not in the lab anymore. It's moving. Up. It's going up. The entire great crater began to shake. Not the gentle tremor of an earthquake, but the violent, rhythmic shudder of something colossal awakening from a billion-year slumber. Dust and small crystals rained down from the cavern ceiling. We have to get out of here, now. Ash yelled, his voice cutting through their stunned shock. He grabbed Gita's arm, pulling the frozen top champion away from the terminal. Nemona, Rika, to the VTOL. They scrambled from the lab, the tremors growing more violent with every step. Outside, the world of Area Zero was in chaos. The corrupted Paradox Pokémon were no longer attacking. They were fleeing in terror, scrambling into caves and crevices, trying to escape the cataclysmic presence that was rising from the crater's very heart. As their VTOL ascended with terrifying speed, they looked down and saw it. The central, deepest part of the crater, the area around the Zero Lab, began to glow with an obscene purple light. The ground buckled and split open. And from the breach, it rose. It was not a Pokémon. It was a geological event given hateful life. A body of rock, earth, and the blackest, most corrupted terrestrial crystals tore itself from the planet's crust. It was a being the size of a mountain, a chaotic, vaguely humanoid shape with no discernible features, only a swirling vortex of purple energy where a face should be. Raw, untamed energy arced from its crystalline shoulders like lightning from a thunderhead. The siege of Mesagoza had begun not with an army, but with a walking apocalypse. Its movements were slow, ponderous, but each step shook the entire region. It ignored the VTOL completely, its attention fixed on a single point on the horizon. With a psychic roar that shattered the very air, it began its march. Its target was Mesagoza, the largest, most concentrated stockpile of its stolen blood. On the surface, the Paldea defense network lit up like a supernova. It's out. Penny shrieked into the command channel, her voice broadcasting to every gym leader, Elite Four member, and Team Star boss in the region. A physical manifestation is out of the crater. It's a kaiju. And it's heading for Mesagoza. In the command center, Rika, Hassel, and Larry stared at the satellite feed, their faces ashen. The sheer scale of the creature was beyond anything they had ever imagined. All gym leaders, converge on Mesagoza. Full mobilization. Rika's voice was a steel whip, cracking through the rising panic. Team Star, you are no longer a sensor net. You are a frontline combat unit. Your objective is to harry its flanks, slow it down. Do not engage directly. I repeat, do not engage directly. This is artistically terrifying, Hassel murmured, his hands clasped in a prayer. The defense of Mesagoza was a portrait of desperate courage. Grusha, the gym leader from Glaciado Mountain, was the first to respond, his Setitan attempting to freeze the ground before the Colossus, creating vast sheets of ice. The creature simply melted them with the sheer heat of its energy, its stride barely faltering. Kofu of Kaskarava arrived next, his Veluza and Wugtrio unleashing massive torrents of water against its legs. The water turned to steam on impact, having no effect. From the sky, Iono of Levencia, riding her Mismagus, tried to create an electromagnetic shield, a desperate attempt to disrupt its energy field. The entity didn't even seem to notice, the shield dissolving like mist as it passed through. The Paldea Defense Network, in a moment that would go down in history, lived up to its new name. The 5 Starmobiles, roaring across the plains, became a pack of metallic jackals nipping at the heels of a god. Giacomo's Shadar Squadmobile blasted it with soundwaves. Mela's Ruchba Squadmobile bathed its legs in superheated flames. It was a valiant, suicidal effort. With a lazy wave of one of its crystalline arms, the entity unleashed a wave of pure force, sending the starmobiles tumbling end over end like toys. The defense was failing. For every attack they launched, the creature seemed to grow stronger, absorbing the ambient terrestrial energy from the very air, its crystal armor regenerating any minor cracks they managed to inflict. It was an unstoppable force, a judgment on their entire world. The League VTOL screamed through the sky, arriving as the colossal entity reached the outskirts of the city. The sight was apocalyptic. The Academy spire, a symbol of their civilization, was dwarfed by the approaching monster. Fires raged where its energy attacks had gone wide. The desperate, futile attacks of the gym leaders and Team Star were like pebbles thrown against a tidal wave. The VTOL landed hard in the Academy's main plaza, now a triage center for the wounded. Ash leapt out before the ramp was fully down, his eyes taking in the devastation, the fear on the faces of the students and staff. He saw Rika coordinating the retreat of the frontline defenders, her face grimed with soot. He saw Hassel helping medics tend to a wounded trainer. And he saw Gita. She stood alone, staring at the monster she had unleashed, her face a blank mask of utter, cataclysmic failure. Her logic had not just been wrong, it had been the catalyst for the end of the world. Ash walked straight to her. There was no anger in his eyes. No, I told you so. Only a terrible, urgent resolve. This is not on you, Gita, he said, his voice cutting through her shock. This is on all of us. But it ends now. I have a plan. She looked at him, her eyes hollow. There is no plan. There is no logic that can defeat that. Then we stop using logic, he said. He raised his voice, shouting to Rika, to Hassel, to everyone within earshot. Penny. Broadcast to every trainer in this city. I need every Terra orb you can find. His command, his absolute certainty in the face of oblivion, was a spark in the darkness. Rika ran to his side. What are you thinking, Ash? We can't fight it. So we're not going to, he explained, his plan coming together in a final, brilliant, insane gambit. Penny is still broadcasting her song of harmony. But it's not getting through the rage. We need to amplify it. We need to turn this entire city into a speaker. The gym leaders, Team Star, everyone with a Terra orb will form a circle around it. On my signal, they will all activate at once, not to attack, but to create a resonant field, an echo chamber for Penny's frequency. And then what? Nemona asked, joining them, her face pale but her eyes fixed on Ash with unwavering faith. Then we give it a focal point, Ash said, his gaze locked on the approaching monster. It sees us as a threat. As thieves. Someone has to stand in its path, absorb its rage, and be the antenna that broadcasts the song directly into its heart. Nemona, Pikachu, and I, we'll be that focal point. It was a suicide mission. To stand in the path of that thing, to willingly take the full, concentrated force of its rage. Before anyone could protest, Gita stepped forward. Her hollow eyes had a flicker of light in them now, the faintest glimmer of a purpose reborn from the ashes of her failure. The power grid, she said, her voice hoarse but clear. To create a field of that magnitude, the synchronization will cause a massive power drain. Someone will need to manually manage the city's energy flow, rerouting power from non-essential sectors to maintain the integrity of the field. I can do it. She was no longer La Primera. She was a technician, a loyal and brutally efficient part of his plan. Ash looked at her, then at Rika, at Nemona. He saw his team, his sword, his shield, his mind, and his foundation. All right, he said, a grim smile touching his lips. Let's get to work. The next few minutes were a blur of motion. Ash's orders, relayed by Penny's citywide broadcast, were followed without question. The gym leaders, battered and exhausted, took their positions. Team Star, their starmobiles damaged but functional, limped to their designated coordinates. Rika took command of the physical defense, coordinating a final line of Pokemon to protect the circle of trainers. Gita disappeared into the Academy's power station, her face a mask of grim determination. And in the center of the city, at the end of the main thoroughfare leading directly to the Academy, Ash and Nemona stood alone. The colossal creature, now just blocks away, loomed over them, its shadow a shroud of death. Scared? Nemona asked, her voice surprisingly steady. Her Pawmot was on one shoulder, Pikachu on the other. A little, Ash admitted. You. Terrified, she said with a shaky, brilliant grin. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The entity stopped. It had reached them. The swirling vortex of its face that was not a face seemed to focus on the two tiny figures and the two small Pokemon defying it. A psychic wave of pure, concentrated hatred washed over them, a pressure that threatened to crush their very souls. Penny. Now. Ash roared, his voice a final, desperate act of defiance. In her basement lab, Penny, with tears streaming down her face, pushed her power levels to the maximum. The song of harmony, a symphony of code and hope, surged from her servers. Everyone, light it up, Rika's voice commanded over the comms. Around the perimeter of the city, hundreds of trainers held up their Terra orbs. As one, they activated them. A massive, shimmering dome of rainbow light erupted over Mesagoza, a beautiful, fragile shield against the darkness. The dome captured Penny's broadcast, amplifying it 1,000-fold, turning the very air into a resonating chamber of peace. The monster roared, enraged by this new defiance. It raised a crystalline arm the size of a skyscraper, ready to bring it down and obliterate the city, the dome, and the two champions at its heart. Pikachu, let's go, Ash yelled. Pawmot, with us, Nemona screamed. They held up their own Terra orbs. But they did not terrestrialize their Pokemon. Instead, they reversed the energy flow, turning themselves and their partners into living conduits. The amplified song of peace surged towards them, a blinding river of golden light. They stood their ground as the mountain-sized fist descended. They met the wave of rage and hate not with an attack, but with an open heart. They took the full, overwhelming force of the amplified frequency and channeled it, pushing it out from themselves, a single, focused beam of pure harmony aimed directly at the descending arm. The moment their beam of peace touched the creature's body of rage, there was no explosion. There was only a profound, world-altering silence. The descending arm slowed, the raw physical power meeting an unmovable object of pure, empathic energy. The hate-filled psychic roar faltered, a note of confusion creeping into it. Inside the creature's chaotic consciousness, for the first time, it felt something other than its own pain. It felt the courage of the boy and girl before it. It felt the loyalty of their partners. It felt the hope of the city behind them. It felt the gentle, persistent, loving song of the lonely girl in the basement, a song that wasn't trying to fight it, but was simply saying, I hear you. I see your pain. You are not alone. The colossal fist, inches from crushing Ash and Nemona, stopped. The swirling vortex of its face flickered. And for a single, breathtaking moment, the psychic rage was replaced by a question. A question that echoed across the silent, watching city. Less than, who are you? Greater than. The siege had been broken. The conversation had begun. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The New Foundation. The question was not a sound. It was a feeling, a tremor in the soul of every person connected to the harmonic field. Less than, who are you? Greater than it was a query born of a billion years of solitude and a single moment of unexpected grace. The colossal arm of crystal and earth, once a weapon of annihilation, now hung suspended above Ash and Nemona, a monument to a god's hesitation. Ash did not answer with his voice. The fragile truce was beyond words. He closed his eyes, and with the harmonic dome of the city as his amplifier, he pushed his own truth into the beam of energy connecting him to the entity. He did not send words or images. He sent feelings. He sent the memory of the thrill of his first Pokemon battle. The steadfast warmth of Pikachu's presence on his shoulder through 100 journeys. The fierce joy of his rivalry with Nemona, the quiet pride he felt for Penny's courage, the grudging respect he'd earned from Rika, the fragile, hopeful connection he'd forged with Gita. He sent his unwavering, absolute love for a world teeming with creatures he saw not as tools for battle, but as family. Then, he sent his sorrow. His sorrow for the entity's pain, for its long, lonely vigil. He didn't offer pity, he offered empathy. A shared understanding of what it felt like to be wounded. Beside him, Nemona did the same. She poured her own fierce, passionate heart into the beam. Her love for the fight, her adoration for a rival who had become her anchor, her burning, protective loyalty to the region she called home. Their two souls, their two truths, intertwined and became a single, undeniable answer. We are the children of this world. We are its partners. And we are sorry for your pain. Let us help you heal. The entity shuddered. The psychic pressure over the city did not vanish, it transformed. The rage was replaced by a profound, ancient melancholy. The crystalline armor that formed its body began to glow, not with a malevolent purple, but with a soft, gentle white light. The great arm did not retreat. It simply dissolved. The rock and crystal disintegrated into a soft, shimmering dust that drifted down like snow. Then the torso, the legs, the monstrous head, the entire colossal form, crumbled, not in a violent explosion, but in a gentle, silent cascade of light. The city held its breath. The mountain of a monster was gone, replaced by a swirling, beautiful blizzard of luminescent particles. The dust settled on the broken streets, the damaged buildings, the scorched earth. And where it touched, it healed. Cracks in the pavement sealed themselves. The fires raging in the distance were extinguished, leaving behind fresh, green grass. The energy of the city, once chaotic and fearful, became calm, serene, and revitalized. The ghost's rage had been a poison. Its sorrow was a balm. As the last of the dust settled, the shimmering dome of light over Mesagoza faded. The trainers lowered their terra orbs, their faces filled with utter, reverent awe. In the center of the plaza, Ash and Nemona finally lowered their arms, the connection severed. Exhaustion, profound and absolute, hit them like a physical blow. Nemona staggered, and Ash caught her, his own legs threatening to buckle. They held each other up, two pillars supporting the weight of a world they had just saved. The silence was broken by a single, tentative cheer from a lone student. Then another. And then, a roar erupted from every corner of the city, a wave of sound, of gratitude and joy and pure, unadulterated relief that washed over them. They had not just witnessed a victory. They had witnessed a miracle. 3 days later, Mesagoza was a city reborn. The blessing of the Zero Requiem, as the media had dubbed the healing dust, had not only repaired the physical damage but had left the region's heart with a strange, beautiful scar. The relationship between Paldea and the terrestrial phenomenon had been fundamentally rewritten. It was no longer a resource to be mined, but a spirit to be respected. The energy felt calmer, more cooperative. Trainers across the region reported that their Pokémon seemed more in tune with them, their bonds stronger. The truce forged in fire and faith had settled into a new, harmonious peace. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the mood was not one of judgment, but of celebration. The room was packed with reporters, citizens, and every major figure in the Paldea region. On the dais, there were 2 podiums. Gita walked to the first podium. She did not wear her severe, high-collared uniform of La Primera. She wore a simple, elegant white suit. The oppressive weight of her former title was gone, and she looked serene, confident, and, for the first time, truly free. For years, I have served as the top champion of the Paldea Pokémon League, she began, her voice clear and steady, amplified throughout the hall. I have done so with a singular focus on logic, order, and control. I believed that these were the pillars of a strong and stable region. I was wrong. A murmur went through the crowd. 3 days ago, we faced a crisis born not of logic, but of pain. And it was not defeated by control, but by compassion. It was met not by the established order, a testament to its courage and brilliance. The crowd erupted in applause. At the side of the stage, Penny, standing with the other members of Team Star, now looking less like delinquents and more like a proud, if unconventional, honor guard, blushed a furious red but stood a little taller. Paldea is entering a new era, Gita continued, her voice filled with a genuine, hopeful warmth. It requires a new kind of leadership. One that understands that true strength is not about being unshakable, but about being willing to listen. That a champion's greatest duty is not to win battles, but to protect bonds. She turned, her gaze falling on Ash, who stood by the second podium. Therefore, it is with the utmost confidence and profound respect that I officially resign my rank. The title of top champion, the true leader of the Paldea region, belongs to the one who saved it. It belongs to him. The applause was deafening. Ash stepped forward, shaking Gita's offered hand. It was a transfer of power, not of conquest, but of grace. As he reached the podium, flanked by Nemona in a crisp new uniform and Rika, whose smirk was one of pure, unadulterated pride, he looked out at the sea of faces and felt not the weight of a crown, but the warmth of a home. He kept his speech short. He spoke not of his own victory, but of the courage of the gym leaders, the loyalty of the Elite Four, the bravery of Team Star, and the hope of every trainer who had raised their Terra Orb in the city's defense. He spoke of Subject Zero not as a monster, but as Paldea's oldest, most powerful spirit, a guardian who had been awoken by pain and soothed by understanding. He promised not to be a ruler, but a partner. When he finished, the standing ovation was thunderous. He had not just won their battles, he had won their hearts. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. The light streamed through the panoramic window of the top champion's office, a room that now felt less like a throne room and more like a home. The stacks of paperwork were gone, replaced by tactical maps and energy monitoring terminals. Ash stood by the window, looking out at the peaceful city below. Pikachu was dozing on the wide windowsill, bathed in the last rays of sunlight. The roar of the crowd had faded, leaving a quiet, contemplative peace. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. The door slid open with a soft hiss. He didn't need to turn. He could feel her energy. Still can't believe they gave you this whole office, Nemona said, her voice bright. She walked up to stand beside him, her gaze following his out the window. The restless, searching fire in her eyes was still there, but it was no longer a hungry flame. It was a steady, warm hearth. Plenty of room for a private battle arena, you think? He just smiled. We'll see. The door hissed open again. Penny entered, holding a datapad, her movements no longer hesitant and shy, but filled with a quiet, confident purpose. She offered them a small, genuine smile before moving to one of the new terminals, her fingers beginning to tap away. She was at home here, in the heart of the network, guarding the region she had helped save. A moment later, Rika sauntered in, leaning against the frame of the door with her arms crossed, a knowing, amused look on her face. She surveyed the scene. The warrior, the intellect, the leader. Quite the little royal court you're building here, champion, she drawled. Finally, Geeta entered. She held a single, steaming cup of tea. She didn't look at Ash, but at the maps on the wall, her expression analytical but relaxed. The energy readings from the crater have stabilized, she said, her voice calm. It seems our guardian is truly at peace. She placed the cup of tea on the desk, a simple, supportive gesture. They didn't speak of what they were. This collection of rivals, outcasts, and queens, all drawn into the orbit of one man. They didn't need to. They were his sword, his shield, his mind, and his counsel. A team. A partnership. A family. Ash looked at the women who had, in their own ways, anchored their lives to his. The weight on his shoulders was immense, the future of an entire region. But he did not feel burdened. He felt complete. All right, Penny said suddenly from her terminal, a small, thoughtful frown on her face. Her voice drew the attention of everyone in the room. What is it? Ash asked, turning from the window. Our truce with Subject Zero is stable, she explained, bringing up a complex diagram of the time machine on the main screen. It is now acting as a willing guardian of the temporal breach. The wound on our side is healing. She paused, tracing a line on the screen that led through the diagram and off into a mess of incomprehensible equations. But a breach is a two-way door, she finished, her voice quiet. The time machine didn't just pull things from the past and future into our world. It created a permanent tunnel. The screams, they've stopped on our end. But now that it's quiet, for the first time, I can hear something else. Faintly. From the other side. A profound silence filled the room as the implication of her words settled over them. The war was won. The crisis was averted. But the door to infinity remained open. The next threat, the next challenge, was already waiting. Ash looked from the screen to the faces of the four incredible women who stood with him. He saw no fear in their eyes. Only readiness. He turned back to the window, to the first stars beginning to appear in the twilight sky over his city, his home, his Paldea. A small, confident smile touched his lips. All right, Ash said. Let's get to work. Chapter 10 End.